Hey friends, hope you're all doing well. We're doing okay too, just really tired since we've been working non-stop. We wanted to answer a question many of you ask: how does our publishing process work? Most of our audiobooks are first posted on Patreon as paid content. They stay behind a paywall for a few months. After that, they become free to access on Patreon forever. Then, a few weeks later, we upload them to other platforms like YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, X. Lately, our community hasn't been growing much, and we could really use your help. Please share our site in your Facebook groups, Discord servers, Reddit threads, Twitter, X, or with any friends who might be interested. Every little bit helps and we really appreciate it. Thanks a lot for being with us and supporting what we do. Good. That means I'm doing my job right. She rolled her eyes but smiled slightly. Setting the trap, the operation moved swiftly. We had Annie cornered, or at least, that's what Erwin and the others believed. I stayed in the background, keeping an eye on her. She hadn't transformed yet. She was still hesitating, like in the manga. Even now, she was hoping for a way out of this without violence. Ren, Armin, and Mikaza led her towards the underground tunnel, trying to play things naturally. But the moment she refused to go down, the tension snapped. She laughed, dry and knowing. Then, with a swift movement, she bit down on her thumb. A blinding blue explosion erupted as her titan form burst forth, sending shockwaves through the streets. The battle begins. Enemy identified, female titan, level 55, threat level, extremely high, experience point reward, 10,000, possible drops. I watched as the Survey Corps scrambled into action, omnidirectional mobility gear firing as soldiers engaged from all sides. Levi's squad moved with ruthless precision, but Annie had improved since Trost. She crushed soldiers midair, dodged attacks with terrifying agility, and countered with brutal efficiency. Erwin barked orders, directing the flow of battle, while Mikaza and Ren led the charge. I took a deep breath, rolling my shoulders. Time to get to work. Activating spiritual pressure augmentation, B rank, strength, speed, and endurance increased temporarily. I dashed forward, flash steps launching me onto a rooftop. From here, I could see the entire battlefield. I could let them handle this. But where was the fun in that? I drew my knife and dove into the chaos. The dance of blades and claws, I zipped between falling rubble and flailing limbs, my instincts guiding my movements. Annie's titan hand slammed down, barely missing me as I flash stepped onto her wrist. Attack opportunity detected. I slashed at her hand, aiming for the tendons. Direct hit, damage dealt, 450. She recoiled, swinging wildly, but I had already moved. Landing on a nearby building, I saw the others struggling. Mikaza was trying to slice into Annie's nape, but the hardened titan skin blocked her blades. I scanned my skills. Spiritual pressure, C rank, activated. An invisible force crashed down upon the battlefield, slowing Annie's movements slightly. She stiffened, sensing something was off. It wasn't enough to stop her, but it gave Mikaza an opening. Her blades flashed. A deep gash formed on Annie's shoulder. Enemy HP, 87%, not enough. I needed to push harder. Loot and leveling up, I spotted one of Annie's crushed victims, a Survey Corps member, already dead. A shimmering icon appeared over the body. Loot available, you have obtained 120 system coins, 1x healing potion, 1x omnidirectional mobility gear gas refill, not bad. But I wasn't here for scraps. Annie roared, sending a shockwave that flung several soldiers off balance. I dodged, flipping midair before landing on a rooftop. Then I saw it, her escape attempt. Just like in the manga, she was making her way toward the wall, trying to climb and flee. If she got away, it'd be a mess to track her down again. Not happening. I flash steps directly into her path, landing on a crumbling building. She saw me. Even in titan form, her eyes narrowed slightly. I smirked. Going somewhere? I raised my blade, spiritual pressure crackling around me. New skill activated, spiritual pressure blade, B rank, a temporary enhancement that allows weapons to cut through tougher materials. I launched forward. My blade struck her ankle just as she leaped, cutting deep, severing muscle. She faltered. And that was all it took. Mikaza and Levi struck in tandem, their blades finding purchase in her exposed nape. With a final roar, Annie collapsed. Critical hit, enemy HP, 10%, but before we could finish it, her body began to harden. Enemy using titan crystallization. A moment later, she was sealed inside an unbreakable crystal. Just like in the manga. The battle was over. Aftermath, the battlefield fell silent. Smoke rose from the wreckage, bodies littered the streets, and the weight of victory felt incomplete. Annie was captured, but just like before, it came at a cost. Ren panted heavily, staring at her crystallized form with clenched fists. My Kaza sheathed her blades, face unreadable. Erwin stood firm, already calculating the next move. And me? I checked my notifications. Battle complete, experience point gained, 12,500, level up, new level, 20, skill upgrade, from spiritual pressure augmentation to advanced spiritual pressure augmentation, a rank. I exhaled, feeling the rush of strength from the level up. Annie was out of the game, for now. But this wasn't the ending I wanted for her. I'd have to find a way to change that. For now, though, I had grown stronger. And that was enough. Chapter 24, Ripples of Change. The battle had ended, but the tension in the air remained. The Survey Corps had secured their so-called victory, yet it felt hollow. Annie, now sealed within her crystal cocoon, lay motionless before us, an unbreakable monument to the futility of this war. I stood atop the rubble of a fallen building, surveying the battlefield. Smoke and dust hung thick in the air, mixing with the scent of blood and burnt flesh. The aftermath was always the same: bodies, destruction, the weight of what we had done pressing down on all of us. Ren was still breathing heavily, his titan form having dissipated, leaving him standing there with clenched fists. His frustration was palpable, but my Kaza was already by his side, keeping an eye on him. Erwin walked towards Annie's crystallized form, his sharp gaze unreadable. "It's over. Secure the perimeter," he ordered, his voice unwavering despite the losses we had suffered. Soldiers scrambled to obey. Levi wiped his blades clean before sheathing them. "TCH. Annoying," he muttered, but his eyes lingered on Annie longer than necessary. He knew, just like I did, that this wasn't truly over. I exhaled and checked my system notifications. Battle complete, experience point gained, 12,500, level up, new level, 20, skill upgrade, from spiritual pressure augmentation to advanced spiritual pressure augmentation, a rank. Not bad. My body felt stronger, more refined, but my mind was elsewhere. I glanced at Annie's frozen expression, her eyes still carrying that same stubborn resolve. Historia approached me hesitantly. "Are you okay? You look tense." I gave her a sidelong glance. "I'm fine. Just thinking about Annie." I didn't answer immediately. "Yeah. About her, and about how things could have gone differently." She frowned. "Do you think we did the right thing?" I sighed. "Right and wrong don't really matter here. Only survival does. But yeah. I don't think this was the best outcome." Her fingers clenched at the fabric of her sleeve, but she nodded, accepting my words. Historia wasn't naive. She had learned the harshness of this world firsthand. Armin joined us, his usual thoughtful expression even more troubled than usual. "Akira, if you had the power to change things, what would you have done?" That was a loaded question. I crossed my arms. "First, I'd make sure we weren't playing into someone else's hands. We just caught a powerful enemy, but do you really think this ends here? There are forces moving in the shadows, and I'd rather not be their puppet." He nodded slowly, processing my words. "Then what do you think happens next?" I smirked. "The real fun begins." The retreat and the debriefing after the battlefield was secured, we returned to our base. The journey back was quiet. The weight of what had just transpired lingered over everyone like a thick fog. As soon as we arrived, we were ushered into a meeting room where Erwin, Levi, and the rest of the elite soldiers gathered to discuss the operation. We accomplished our primary objective. Erwin began, his voice steady. "Annie Lenhart is contained. However, our losses were not insignificant, and I doubt this is the last we will see of the enemy's interference." Levi leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "TCH. If anything, this might have just pissed them off. The people behind this. They won't just sit back and do nothing." Ren, who had been silent, finally spoke. "Then what do we do?" Erwin met his gaze. "We prepare. We dig deeper. We find out exactly who our true enemies are before they make their next move." I listened carefully, resisting the urge to roll my eyes. I already knew who the real enemies were. Marley, the warriors, the political schemes behind the walls. But knowing wasn't enough, I needed power. Enough power to ensure that when the time came, I could act on my own terms. Levi's eyes flicked towards me. "And you? You were surprisingly effective back there. Care to explain?" I shrugged. "I adapt fast." His stare lingered, but he didn't press further. "Good." The meeting wrapped up soon after. Everyone was exhausted, and while the victory was ours, there was little to celebrate. The battle may have ended, but the war was far from over. A quiet moment later that night, I found myself outside, sitting on a rooftop overlooking the city. The stars were faint, barely visible beyond the clouds, but the cool air helped clear my head. Footsteps approached. I didn't need to turn to know who it was. "Couldn't sleep either, huh?" Historia asked, sitting beside me. I smirked. Too much on my mind. She hugged her knees to her chest, gazing at the horizon. You're different from the others, you know. Even from Ren. You don't act like you're fighting for some grand cause, but you still care. It's confusing. I chuckled. Maybe I just like keeping people on their toes. She rolled her eyes. Or maybe you just don't want to admit that you're more of a hero than you think. I didn't respond to that. Because if I did, I might have had to admit she wasn't completely wrong. But I wasn't a hero. I was just a gamer trying to level up. And in this world, that was enough. Chapter 25, Sharpening the Blade. Preparing for the storm. The silence after battle always felt unnatural. The Survey Corps had returned to headquarters, weary but victorious. The operation had been a success. Annie Lenhart, the female Titan, was captured. Yet, even as Erwin and the higher-ups debriefed the mission, I couldn't shake the feeling that things weren't over. Not by a long shot. A system reward worth the bloodshed. Mission complete. Experience point gained, 12,500. Level up, new level, 20. Skill upgrade, from spiritual pressure augmentation to advanced spiritual pressure augmentation, a rank. The rush of leveling up flooded my body with renewed energy. My spiritual pressure had evolved, becoming more condensed and potent. It was no longer just a simple enhancement, it was a refined force, like tempered steel compared to raw iron. And then another notification popped up. Special reward unlocked, new skill draw, you have obtained, Getsuga Tensho, B rank. I blinked. No way. That was Ichigo Kurosaki's iconic attack in Bleach, a devastating crescent-shaped slash of compressed spiritual energy. With my current build, it was going to be lethal in close combat. I clenched my fists, feeling the static crackle of spiritual pressure humming beneath my skin. My body was changing, growing stronger with every battle. But I wasn't going to be reckless. I needed to refine my control, push my limits in a controlled environment. And I had just the place for that. Training in the system farm. After the debriefing, I slipped away unnoticed. Historia had been watching me a lot lately, but thankfully, she was occupied with the aftermath of the mission. I found a secluded spot and activated the system. Enter system farm? Y/N. I selected yes, and the world shifted. The cold stone walls of the Survey Corps HQ vanished, replaced by the vibrant expanse of my personal training ground. Lush green fields stretched in every direction, the air crisp and clean. A place untouched by war or titans, perfect for honing my craft. I unsheathed my knife and took a steady breath, centering myself. My new skill needed testing. Activating Getsuga Tensho, B rank, a surge of power gathered at the edge of my blade, crackling with dark energy. I slashed forward, and a crescent-shaped wave of condensed spiritual pressure shot outward, tearing through the earth. The force behind it sent a shockwave rippling across the field, uprooting plants and sending dirt flying. I exhaled, a slow grin spreading across my face. This was going to be fun. For the next few hours, I refined my control over Getsuga Tensho. Unlike Ichigo, I wasn't wielding a massive sword, so I had to modify my approach. Instead of swinging with raw force, I focused on efficiency, shorter, faster slashes that delivered precision strikes. I also experimented with condensing the attack into smaller bursts, using less energy but maintaining cutting power. Skill mastery increased, new variation unlocked, Getsuga Burst, a compact version of Getsuga Tensho that can be fired in rapid succession. Less powerful but faster and consumes less spiritual pressure. That was exactly what I needed, something I could use without draining myself in long battles. Refining my spiritual pressure control. Once I had the new technique down, I shifted my focus to my spiritual pressure itself. With advanced spiritual pressure augmentation, my energy had become more refined, but I needed to push it further. If I could control it better, I could increase my overall combat efficiency without relying too much on brute force. I sat cross-legged in the center of the field, closing my eyes and focusing inward. My spiritual pressure was like a wild storm, powerful but untamed. I needed to shape it, guide it like a flowing river instead of letting it explode outward aimlessly. Minutes turned into hours as I practiced control. I cycled the energy through my body, directing it to different limbs, testing how it enhanced my speed, strength, and reflexes. With each cycle, I gained more finesse. Spiritual pressure mastery increased, new passive skill, spiritual pressure flow. Your spiritual pressure now strengthens your body naturally, increasing durability and stamina over time, a passive boost. That was exactly what I needed. If I could maintain a constant flow of spiritual pressure through my muscles, I'd be able to fight longer without exhausting myself. This was a game changer. A conversation with Historia. After returning from the system farm, I found myself wandering the halls of HQ. Most of the Survey Corps was resting, but a familiar presence stopped me in my tracks. Historia. She stood near one of the windows, arms crossed, looking out at the city below. When she noticed me, she sighed. You disappeared again. I smirked. Missed me? She rolled her eyes. Just wondering what you're up to. You always vanish after big missions. I leaned against the wall beside her. Had some things to think about. She studied me for a moment before speaking again. You're different, Akira. Stronger. But also distant. I didn't respond immediately. I wasn't the type to open up easily. Instead, I shifted the conversation. You handled yourself well out there. She scoffed. Barely. I felt useless. I shook my head. You're stronger than you think. And you're only going to get stronger. She bit her lip, as if debating something, then finally said, just don't die, okay? I grinned. Not planning on it. Preparing for what's next. The battle with Annie was over, but the war wasn't. I knew what was coming. The next major confrontation wasn't far off. The Beast Titan, the basement, the secrets that would unravel everything. I wasn't here to play hero, but I wasn't going to stand on the sidelines either. The stronger I became, the more freedom I had to shape my own fate in this world. As I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I checked my system notifications one last time. Stats updated, new skill acquired, next dungeon available soon. A new dungeon, huh? That meant more experience, more skills, and more chances to grow. I closed my eyes, a smirk on my lips. I was ready. Guys, what's your choice for the next dungeon after Out? A. Demon's Lair, more swords, more blood, now with demons. B. Harry Potter, chill a bit, learn magic, maybe mess with Snape. C. Tokyo Ghoul, eat or get eaten. Simple. Comment below if your choice is not listed here. What's the vibe? Chapter 26, Shadows of the Past, Storms of the Future. The days after Annie's capture passed in a strange haze. The Survey Corps had barely caught their breath, yet the tension in the air remained thick, suffocating. Victory had come at a cost, and with Annie frozen in her crystal, too many questions remained unanswered. For me, it was the perfect time to prepare. The system's call, necessary dungeon progression detected, difficulty increasing, new threats incoming. I frowned at the notification. New threats? That wasn't good. My actions were already altering the dungeon's evolution. The system was pushing back. Titans are no longer your only enemies. Beware the hands that move in the shadows. I exhaled slowly. So, it begins. If things were accelerating, that meant the conspiracies, the true war behind the walls, would be creeping in sooner. Kenny's squad, the political upheaval, and, eventually, the truth hidden beneath Shiganshina. The Beast Titan wasn't far off either. I needed to get stronger. Fast. System farm. Beyond the limits. I entered the system farm immediately after receiving the notification. The air was thick with residual energy from my last training session. My spiritual pressure was stronger than ever, and my mastery over Gatsu potential had improved. But I needed more than just brute force. New training mode unlocked, combat simulation. Would you like to battle AI-generated opponents? I grinned. Perfect. I selected yes and the farm shifted, morphing into a battlefield. 3 figures emerged, each one a replica of an omnidirectional mobility gear-equipped soldier, armed with dual blades. They attacked without hesitation. My knife met their swords with a sharp clang, sparks flying as I dodged, weaved, and struck back. Unlike Titans, these enemies were fast, unpredictable. I could handle them, but they forced me to refine my spiritual pressure flow, pushing me to blend raw power with calculated movement. Every slash, every step became sharper, more efficient. Combat adaptation achieved, new passive skill unlocked, spiritual pressure combat sense. Your spiritual pressure now instinctively enhances your battle awareness, predicting attacks before they land. I exhaled, my heartbeat steady. This was what I needed. Unavoidable encounters. After leaving the system farm, I stepped out into the real world, only to run into Levi. His sharp gaze studied me, calculating. You're different. I met his stare, unfazed. People change. TCH. He crossed his arms. You fight like you've seen more battles than you should have. I smirked. Maybe I have. He didn't press further, but I knew Levi wasn't the type to let things slide. He'd be watching. I wasn't the only one getting suspicious looks. Historia had been keeping an eye on me, and I could feel her gaze whenever I moved through HQ. Something told me she'd ask questions soon. For now, I had other things to focus on. The shadows moved. The first sign that things were escalating came in the form of a missing scout. Disappeared during routine patrol. The second sign? Increased military police presence. Then came the inevitable. New quest, survive the assassins, objective, evade or eliminate the anti-Survey Corps operatives. I barely had time to react before I heard the faintest sound of movement, too fast for a normal soldier. I dodged just as a blade sliced through the air where my neck had been. 3 figures in black cloaks, omnidirectional mobility gear gleaming under the moonlight. Assassins. Not titans. Human threats. I grinned, adrenaline surging. Finally, some real opponents. The fight was brutal, fast, and unlike any battle before. They weren't mindless beasts, I couldn't overpower them with raw strength. They fought with precision, trying to kill me in a single, clean strike. I adapted quickly, my spiritual pressure combat sense flaring. My body moved on instinct, dodging the first strike, countering the second. My knife met steel, parrying a lethal thrust before I struck back with Getsuga Burst. A dark crescent of energy shredded through the air, forcing them to retreat. "Who sent you?" I asked, my voice calm. They didn't answer. One of them vanished into the night, while the remaining 2 lunged again. I didn't hold back this time. By the time it was over, one assassin lay unconscious, the other barely breathing. I loomed over the survivor, pressing my blade to his throat. "You don't get to die yet. Talk." He coughed, blood trailing from his lips. "This isn't over." I felt a shift in the dungeon, like a storm was coming. And I knew he was right. This was just the beginning. The path forward the next day, Erwin called for an emergency meeting. "We have enemies within our walls," he said, his voice firm. "Titans are not the only threat. Be prepared for anything." His eyes met mine briefly. He knew something was off about me. But like Levi, he didn't press, not yet. As I left the meeting, Historia caught up to me. "You disappeared again last night." I gave her a half smile. "I have my reasons." She hesitated. "Be careful." I nodded. "You too." System notification, dungeon evolution complete. Next major event, the Beast Titan approaches. I clenched my fists. It was happening sooner than expected. Good. I was ready. Chapter 27, Shadows Before the Storm. The air in the Survey Corps headquarters was thick with tension. Even though Annie Lenhart had been captured, her crystallized form left more questions than answers. The higher-ups, Erwin especially, were already planning their next move, knowing that the real war had just begun. I leaned against a cold stone wall, listening to murmurs of speculation. The mission had been a success, but I knew the upcoming battles would make this look like child's play. I clenched my fists as power surged through me. My spiritual pressure had reached an entirely new level. The energy within me wasn't just potent, it was refined, controlled, and devastating. This was beyond just enhancing my body, my very presence carried an oppressive weight now. Special loot drop, random skill draw, you have obtained, Amaterasu, a rank. I froze. No way. That was Itachi Uchiha's ability, the black flames that burned anything until it was reduced to nothing. With this and Getsu potential, I was stacking serious firepower. But I needed control before I even thought about using it in battle. The last thing I needed was to set half of the HQ on fire by accident. Training in the system farm. Once night fell, I slipped away, avoiding Historia's watchful gaze. She'd been paying closer attention to me lately, her curiosity barely concealed. I activated the system and entered my farm. The moment I arrived, I felt the sheer magnitude of my spiritual pressure. The ground trembled slightly beneath me. I needed to adjust, refine it. I focused first on Amaterasu. Summoning the black flames required precision, otherwise, I'd be wasting a devastating technique. I closed my eyes and channeled my energy, feeling the surge of power build up. Amaterasu activated, a small black flame flickered in my palm, harmless for now. But the moment I willed it forward, it shot out and ignited a training dummy. The wood didn't just burn, it disintegrated, the flames consuming it like a living entity. I smirked. Yeah, this will come in handy. Next was refining my spiritual pressure. I had reached the peak of augmentation, meaning I needed more control rather than raw output. I cycled my energy, letting it flow more naturally instead of forcing it outward in bursts. It was about refinement now, not just brute force. After hours of control training, the system rewarded me. Spiritual pressure mastery increased, new passive skill, spiritual pressure suppression. You can now conceal your spiritual pressure completely, making it undetectable to enemies. This was crucial. If I could hide my strength, I'd have more freedom to maneuver in battles without tipping my hand too soon. The Survey Corps meeting. Returning to HQ, I found myself standing beside Historia and Mikasa in the main hall. Erwin was addressing the commanders, explaining our next course of action. Our next priority is investigating Rand's basement, he stated firmly. The key he possesses is the only lead we have to uncovering the truth behind the Titans. The moment he mentioned the basement, I tensed. This was it, the point where everything changed. Levi glanced in my direction, his sharp eyes narrowing slightly. We're running out of time. The enemy knows we have any, and they won't sit back quietly. Hand adjusted her glasses, grinning. Which is why we need to move before they do. Historia nudged me slightly. You seem deep in thought. She whispered. I glanced at her. Just thinking about what's coming. She frowned. And what do you think is coming? I hesitated before answering. War. A moment with Historia and my Kaza after the meeting, I found myself on the rooftop, staring at the stars. The wind was cold, carrying the scent of approaching rain. You've been acting different. I turned to see my Kaza standing there, arms crossed. Historia was with her, both of them watching me carefully. My Kaza's expression was unreadable, but I could tell she was trying to figure me out. You disappear a lot. Training? Something like that. I wasn't about to reveal my system, but she wasn't the type to accept vague answers. Historia spoke up. I've noticed it too. You're getting stronger, but it feels like you're distancing yourself. I sighed. I just have a lot to prepare for. My Kaza stepped closer. We all do. But you don't have to do it alone. That surprised me. She was usually reserved, but there was something different in her tone. Maybe concern? I wasn't sure. Historia nodded. You trust us, don't you? I hesitated, then smirked. Yeah. I do. The conversation shifted after that, and for a brief moment, things felt normal. We talked about small things, memories, ambitions, even ridiculous things like what life would be like without Titans. It was a reminder that despite the war, despite everything, we were still human. The calm before the storm the next morning, the Survey Corps prepared to depart for Shiganshina. I stood among them, gripping my knife as the weight of what was to come settled in. Ren, Armin, my Kaza, Historia, Levi. Everyone had their own role to play. But me? I was here to forge my own path, with my own power. The war for humanity's future was about to begin. And I was ready. System update, level 22, spiritual pressure, peak augmentation, S rank, new skill, Amaterasu, A rank, new passive, spiritual pressure suppression, next major event, battle for Shiganshina, chapter 28, shadows of the future. The night was eerily quiet as I lay on my cot, staring at the ceiling. The battle with Annie was over, but the true war was just beginning. My mind raced as I recalled the events of Attack on Titan, piecing together what would come next. System notification, memory synchronization, recollecting canon events, the manga's timeline flooded my thoughts. I knew what was about to unfold. Historia's past would soon come to light, and with it, the entire structure of the royal government would start to crumble. The corruption at the heart of the walls was something Erwin had been working toward exposing, but the risks were immense. Key future events, the uprising arc, the Survey Corps would soon be branded as criminals while fighting against the fake king's regime. Historia's true lineage would be revealed, and her father, Rodrice, would attempt to turn her into a Titan to consume Ren. Zeke's arrival, the Beast Titan was lurking beyond the walls, gathering forces for a future invasion. Unlike before, I could prepare for his brutal tactics. Return to Shiganshina, the battle for Ren's basement, the truth of the Titans, and the ultimate showdown against the colossal and armored Titans. I took a deep breath, my mind racing with possibilities. If I played my cards right, I could shift the tide in subtle but meaningful ways. Strategizing the next moves. 1. Protecting Historia. The Rice family was the true royal bloodline, and Rodrice would soon try to reclaim Historia. If I let things play out naturally, she'd eventually break free and take her rightful place as queen. But should I let it happen that way? If I intervened early, I could spare her a lot of suffering. New system quest, secure Historia's future. Objective, prevent Rodrice from using Historia as a pawn. Bonus, gain her full trust before the Rice family intervenes. Reward? I smirked. Good. The system recognized the importance of this move. Historia was becoming attached to me, and if I played this right, I could be her anchor before things spiraled out of control. 2. Preparing for the Beast Titan. Zeke was a problem. His intellect, combat prowess, and ability to command Titans made him far deadlier than brute force enemies like Reiner. He was the type of enemy who could counter my usual reckless aggression. I needed a countermeasure. I sat up, activating the system shop and browsing potential skills. Something that could help me against high-speed projectiles. Something defensive yet flexible. Shop purchase, Key Shield, Dragon Ball, a basic energy barrier that absorbs a portion of incoming damage. Can be layered with spiritual pressure for additional durability. I immediately felt the energy shift within me as the skill integrated into my abilities. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. 3. Strengthening the Survey Corps. Trust. Erwin and Levi were wary of me. They knew I was strong, but they didn't fully trust me yet. If I wanted to say in future events, I had to earn their confidence. That meant proving my worth outside of battle. System farm draining, refining my skills. Slipping away from HQ, I accessed the system farm, where time didn't flow like in the real world. My personal training ground awaited, the perfect place to refine my new abilities. I activated Key Shield, watching as a translucent barrier flickered to life around me. Testing its durability, I launched Getsuga Tensho at myself, feeling the force dull against the shield before breaking through. Not bad, it could block minor attacks, but it wouldn't save me from a full-powered Titan strike yet. Hours passed as I trained, layering spiritual pressure into the shield, adjusting its energy output, and testing how long I could maintain it. By the end, I could sustain it for short bursts in combat, enough to deflect Zeke's deadly projectiles if used correctly. Skill mastery increased, reinforced Key Shield, returning to reality, strengthening bonds when I returned to HQ. Dawn was approaching. To my surprise, Historia was waiting for me outside my quarters, arms crossed. "You disappeared again," she said, raising an eyebrow. "Had things to think about," I replied smoothly. She studied me, her blue eyes searching for something deeper. "You're always planning something, aren't you?" I smirked. "You could say that." Her gaze softened. "Just don't do everything alone, okay?" A small chuckle escaped me. "I'll keep that in mind." My cause affection +3, Historia affection +4, my cause had been standing nearby, arms folded, listening silently. She didn't say much, but the way she lingered told me she was keeping an eye on me. Her concern was subtle, but it was there. For the first time in a while, I felt like I wasn't walking this path alone. The storm was coming, but I was ready. Chapter 29, The Web of Trust and the Coming Storm. Building trust wasn't as simple as saving lives or fighting alongside someone. It required patience, careful words, and just enough mystery to keep people intrigued. That was something I knew well. The Survey Corps had suffered losses, and the city was still reeling from the female Titan's attack. Most people had no idea that Titans could be among them in human form, and the higher-ups weren't exactly keen on spreading that paranoia. That meant, for now, any secret stayed buried, literally. Still, the atmosphere was tense. Soldiers whispered among themselves, throwing wary glances at one another. The seeds of doubt had already been planted. Playing the long game, I made my rounds, interacting with different squads, subtly reinforcing my place within the Corps. With Gene, it was easy. He was skeptical by nature but had a good head on his shoulders. "You really don't trust anyone, huh?" I teased as we leaned against the training field fence, watching new recruits spar. Gene scoffed. "After everything we've seen? You're damn right I don't. But I'll give you this, you're different. You don't hesitate?" I smirked. "I just know when to pick my fights." With Sasha, I took a different approach. I accidentally dropped some high-quality rations near her during a break, and within seconds, she was at my side, grinning. "You, my friend, are officially in my good graces. Didn't know I was out of them." She laughed, tearing into the food. "Trust me, everyone starts at zero until they feed me." Connie was an easy one. He was simple, straightforward. "You ever get nervous?" he asked after training, panting as he wiped sweat from his forehead. "All the time," I said honestly. "Difference is, I don't let it show." And then there was Historia. A conversation with a queen in disguise. "Are you always this good at reading people?" Historia asked as we sat on the rooftop, looking over the city. The sun was setting, casting golden light over the damaged buildings. "It helps when you don't get too caught up in your own head," I said, resting my arms on my knees. "People tell you what they want if you listen the right way." She studied me, thoughtful. "And what do I want?" "To stop feeling powerless," I said without hesitation. Her expression didn't change, but I caught the way her fingers tightened on the stone ledge. "That obvious, huh?" To someone paying attention. Historia exhaled and leaned back. "You're a strange one, Akira. It's like you know more than you should." I just smiled. Call it intuition. The calm before the storm. A few days later, a mission was issued for an inspection trip outside the city to check the Walrose perimeter. A group of soldiers, including myself, was assigned to accompany the Survey Corps leadership to a nearby town. The recent events with the female Titan had left everyone on edge, and there were murmurs about the possibility of more infiltrators hiding among them. We arrived in the town by horseback, the streets bustling with civilians going about their daily lives. But even with the normalcy, there was tension in the air. Something wasn't right. While Erwin and the others gathered intelligence, I observed, listening in on conversations and keeping an eye out for anything suspicious. Mikasa, standing beside me, noticed my focus. "You're watching for something," she stated, arms crossed. I glanced at her. "Aren't you?" She nodded, gripping the hilt of her blade. "Something feels off." Before I could respond, a group of scouts rode in from the outskirts of the town, their faces pale with urgency. They quickly made their way toward Erwin, whispering something that made his expression harden. The air grew heavier. "What's going on?" Jean muttered, stepping up beside me. I didn't answer. I already had a bad feeling. Erwin turned to the assembled soldiers, his voice calm but firm. "We may have a situation. I need all available personnel ready to move out immediately." People began moving at once, but there was no clear explanation, only silent urgency. No public announcements, no cries of alarm. Whatever was happening, they weren't spreading the news just yet. My Kaza looked at me again, this time with an edge of seriousness. "We need to be ready." I gave her a quick grin. Wouldn't miss it. This was it. Another turning point. And I was ready. Chapter 30, the counterattack begins the moment the sun dipped beneath the horizon. The march to Shiganshina began. The eerie silence of the abandoned town loomed over the advancing soldiers. It was supposed to be empty, long since abandoned after the fall of Wall Maria, but the tension in the air suggested otherwise. Akira rode with the main force, keeping close to Levi and Erwin. The streets were in ruins, weathered by time and neglect. Windows were shattered, doors hung loose on their hinges, and vines crawled over what remained of buildings. For a moment, it seemed like they had time to breathe. Then the first scream shattered the illusion of calm. The ambushy titan exploded from one of the ruined buildings, catching a soldier off guard. Its massive hand crushed him before he could react, blood splattering across the broken stone. More titans emerged, their grotesque forms blocking the main street. "Form up. Defensive positions." Erwin's voice boomed through the town as soldiers scrambled into formation. Akira's mind worked at lightning speed. The attack was too coordinated. These weren't just stray titans wandering into the area, someone was guiding them. The beast titan. And sure enough, from his vantage point, Akira saw the massive ape-like figure standing atop the outer ruins, his piercing gaze surveying the battlefield like a commander overseeing his troops. The strategy unfolds. Levi was already moving, his squad tearing through titans with surgical precision. But they were outnumbered, and the titans kept coming. Akira activated his system interface, mentally sorting through his available resources. He had to make sure Erwin survived. The thought of the charismatic commander dying here? Unacceptable. A strategy formed in his mind almost instantly. Step 1, cut off the Titan's advance. Levi. Take Squadra and clear the east side. Erwin, we need to set up a defensive perimeter around the central plaza. If we let them push us into tight spaces, we're done for. Levi didn't hesitate. He trusted Akira's judgment, and within seconds, his squad veered toward the east, tearing into the Titans with brutal efficiency. Meanwhile, Akira led a small team toward the rooftops, his long knife flashing as he slashed through a Titan's nape midair. The system registered the kill instantly. Titan eliminated, plus 500 experience point, loot acquired, hardened Titan bone shard, interesting. But there was no time to check the inventory. From his elevated position, he could see the battlefield more clearly. The Titans were funneling in through 3 key entry points. If they didn't act fast, they'd be overrun. Jean. Take 5 soldiers and collapse that building to block off the north passage. Sasha, Connie, cover them. Historia, keep the injured safe in the center. Orders flew, and the soldiers moved with precision. The battle was shifting in their favor. But the Beast Titan wasn't done playing. The Beast Titan's response: a loud crash shook the town as a massive boulder slammed into the ground near their defensive line, crushing several soldiers instantly. The Beast Titan had begun his assault, launching debris with terrifying accuracy. Akira's eyes narrowed. If he kept that up, they were going to get wiped out. Time for step 2. Levi. Change of plans. I'll handle the Beast Titan's throws. You take out the Titans still flooding the streets. Levi hesitated only for a second before nodding. He understood. Akira had a plan, and there was no time to argue. Akira pulled a special item from his inventory, a smoke signal flare he had looted from a previous dungeon. He fired it straight into the sky, drawing the Beast Titan's attention. You want a challenge? Come get me, monkey. Akira taunted, his voice carrying over the battlefield. The Beast Titan's head turned, and for a brief moment, Akira swore he saw curiosity in those animalistic eyes. Fine. Akira muttered under his breath. Let's see if I can outplay a war general. The final stand. Using his omnidirectional mobility gear, Akira propelled himself at breakneck speed, dodging another massive boulder by mere inches. He needed to close the distance fast. If he could get in range, he could disrupt the Beast Titan's attack pattern. Below, Levi and his squad continued to tear through the Titans. Jean's team had successfully collapsed the north building, limiting the enemy's entry points. Erwin was holding strong, rallying the remaining soldiers. Akira landed on a rooftop just as the Beast Titan prepared to throw another boulder. Too slow. He activated his newest skill, one he had been saving for a moment like this. Skill activated, spatial dash. In the blink of an eye, Akira vanished and reappeared behind the beast titan's head, his blade already swinging. A deep slash tore through the titan's shoulder, making it stumble forward. For the first time, the beast titan looked genuinely surprised. Akira grinned. "You didn't see that coming, did you?" The battle wasn't over yet. But the tide had turned. Chapter 31, Clash of Wills. The beast titan staggered, its shoulder torn open by Akira's strike. Blood gushed from the wound, but Zeke Yeager was far from defeated. His piercing eyes narrowed as he quickly reassessed the situation. "Impressive," Zeke muttered, rolling his shoulder. But not enough. With a powerful swipe, he attempted to swat Akira away like a mere insect, but the system-enhanced warrior was already moving. He activated spatial dash again, reappearing on the beast titan's opposite flank. Another slash, another wound carved into its massive form. The battlefield below was a chaotic dance of life and death. Levi and his squad had thinned the titan numbers considerably, but more kept flooding in. Jean's team had secured the northern passage, and Sasha's expert instincts kept the advancing titans at bay, using her agility and well-placed strikes to distract and delay them. But Erwin's situation was dire. A massive titan had broken through the defenses, its gaping maw inches away from the commander. Erwin barely had time to react when a streak of steel severed the creature's nape. Akira landed beside him, breathing heavily, his long knife slick with steaming titan blood. "You're still in one piece," Akira said with a grin. Erwin chuckled, unfazed by the near-death experience. "Thanks to you." A sudden, deafening impact shook the battlefield. Zeke, tired of Akira's interference, had hurled another boulder, but this time, straight at Akira and Erwin's position. Akira grabbed Erwin and propelled them both off the rooftop with his omnidirectional mobility gear just as the boulder crashed into the structure, reducing it to rubble. They landed roughly on another rooftop, rolling to absorb the impact. "This beast titan is a problem," Erwin said, dusting himself off. "We can't keep fighting on two fronts." Akira nodded, his 180 IQ already formulating the next move. He turned to Levi, who had just finished slicing through another titan. "I need you to finish him," Akira said, pointing at Zeke. "I'll clear the field." Levi met Akira's gaze, his expression unreadable. He had already considered taking out the beast titan, but this was different. Akira was buying him an opening. "Don't die," Levi muttered before vanishing in a blur of movement, heading straight for Zeke. Akira turned his attention back to the remaining titans. He flipped open his system menu. Inventory, Hardened Titan Bone Shard, Explosive Kunai, X3, Strength Booster, 3 minutes, perfect? He activated the booster, feeling raw power surge through his body. His muscles tensed, his speed increased, and his knife gleamed with newfound lethality. He threw the explosive kunai at the largest group of titans still advancing. The resulting blast sent them reeling, creating a momentary gap in the chaos. Akira dashed through, his knife severing napes with terrifying efficiency. Every kill granted him more experience, every titan that fell making their victory more certain. Then, a chilling roar pierced the air. The armored titan. Reiner had arrived. Akira landed on a rooftop and locked eyes with the behemoth standing at the far end of the battlefield. The armored titan cracked its knuckles, its intent clear. "I was wondering when you'd show up," Akira muttered. He had already weakened the beast titan, and Levi was closing in for the kill. If he could keep Reiner occupied, this battle could finally turn in their favor. Ren, Mikasa, Armin, and the rest of the main squad had regrouped, fighting through the carnage. Ren, already in his titan form, engaged the armored titan head-on, grappling with him in a brutal clash. Mikasa was on the move, her blades flashing as she cut down titans trying to flank Ren. Armin, positioned at a higher vantage point, was analyzing the battle, directing soldiers to reinforce weak points. "Ren! Hold him down!" Akira shouted as he launched himself towards the battlefield. Ren roared in response, driving his fists into Reiner's hardened plating. Cracks formed, but Reiner retaliated, slamming Ren into a nearby structure. The impact sent debris flying, nearly crushing Historia and the injured soldiers in the center. "Move!" Jean yelled, dragging Historia away just in time. Connie provided covering fire with a set of thunder spears, forcing the armored titan to step back momentarily. Akira took the opportunity to rush in, slashing deep into Reiner's exposed leg joint. Sparks and steaming flesh filled the air as his blade bit into the hardened armor, cutting through a weak point Ren had created earlier. Reiner bellowed in pain, stumbling as his balance faltered. Ren seized the chance, throwing a devastating punch that sent Reiner crashing to the ground. Meanwhile, high above the battlefield, Levi had reached Zeke. The beast titan barely had time to react before Levi's swords tore into his flesh, slicing tendons and muscle with surgical precision. Zeke roared in agony, attempting to counterattack, but Levi was relentless. Akira could hear the unmistakable sound of steel cutting flesh as Levi struck again and again, blood spraying in every direction. Akira turned his attention back to the battlefield. The Titans were thinning, but victory was not yet secured. The colossal Titan was still unaccounted for. Then, a massive explosion erupted from the inner district. Armin's eyes widened in horror. It's Berthold. The colossal Titan had transformed. The battlefield was far from over. Akira clenched his fists, his spiritual power flaring around him in a dark, swirling aura. He had been holding back, but now wasn't the time for restraint. He shot forward, his body vanishing in a flash of spiritual energy, reappearing just behind the armored Titan. With a single slash infused with his spiritual power, his blade carved deeper into Reiner's armor than any previous strike. Reiner howled in pain, his Titan body trembling from the sheer force of Akira's attack. Ren, seizing the moment, wrapped his arms around Reiner's torso, locking him in place. Do it, Akira. Ren roared. Akira raised his knife, his spiritual power condensing into the blade's edge. Let's end this. With a final, devastating strike, he brought his weapon down, cutting straight through the armored Titan's weak point. As Reiner's Titan form crumbled, the battlefield fell silent for a brief moment. But they couldn't celebrate yet. The true battle for Shiganshina had only just begun. Chapter 32, The true battle begins. The dust settled around the crumbling remains of Reiner's Titan form. Steam billowed from his injuries as Ren's Titan stood over him, panting, fists clenched. The battlefield was silent for a heartbeat, then came the deafening boom from the inner district. Akira turned sharply, his instincts screaming. The explosion wasn't just massive, it was catastrophic. A wave of intense heat radiated through the town, searing rooftops and sending a shockwave that nearly knocked him off his feet. Then, a towering, skinless figure loomed over the district walls, its molten flesh dripping with raw heat. Berthold had transformed. Armin's face went pale. The colossal Titan. No one had time to recover. The battle wasn't just continuing, it was escalating. The shift in battle. Akira's mind kicked into overdrive. They had planned for this, but seeing it unfold was different. Reiner was down for now, but Berthold's transformation had wiped out a huge portion of the area inside the walls. If they didn't act fast, the entire district would be razed to the ground. Ren looked at the massive Titan in front of him, then back at Akira. His Titan body twitched with anticipation. What's the plan? Ren grunted, cracking his knuckles, ready for a fight. Akira took a quick glance at their forces. Levi was still finishing off the beast Titan, hopefully. Jean, Connie, and Sasha were regrouping, Historia was securing the wounded, and Erwin was already shouting commands to the surviving soldiers. We can't let Berthold burn everything down. Akira said. Ren, you need to engage him, keep him focused on you. But don't fight recklessly. Berthold's advantage is his sheer size and heat output. If you stay too close for too long, you'll get roasted alive. Ren nodded, his Titan form flexing its fingers. So, hit and run? Exactly. Meanwhile, Armin, Akira turned to the strategist. We need a way to bring him down. You've analyzed him more than anyone. Armin bit his lip, sweat forming on his brow. He won't fall for the same tricks again. But I have an idea. I just need a clear shot. Akira smirked. I'll make sure you get one. The attack on Berthold Ren's Titan charged first, his heavy steps shaking the ground as he launched himself at the colossal Titan. But Berthold was ready this time. A massive wave of heat erupted from his body, sending a flaming shockwave outward. Ren barely had time to shield himself before being blasted backward, crashing into a nearby building. Damn it! Jean cursed from a rooftop. How the hell do you even get close to that thing? Akira didn't hesitate. He activated Spatial Dash, appearing just above the colossal Titan's shoulder before slashing downward with his long knife, infused with spiritual power. The blade met resistance. Berthold had hardened parts of his body in anticipation. Akira clicked his tongue and flipped backward just as another explosion of heat erupted. He barely managed to reappear on a distant rooftop before the shockwave obliterated the spot where he had just stood. Berthold turned his enormous head, eyes scanning for Akira like he was an annoying fly. He's learned to compensate for his weaknesses. Akira muttered. Armin, still on the higher ground, called out, Akira. Can you distract him while I direct Ren? Akira grinned. You mean play bait? Basically. Say no more. Bait and strike. Akira launched himself forward again, dodging fiery explosions with precise movements. Each time Berthold tried to swat him down, Akira used Spatial Dash to reposition, slashing at any vulnerable points he could find. You're annoying. Berthold muttered, his voice booming. Akira laughed midair. You say that like it's a bad thing. Ren seized the opportunity. With a deafening roar, he dashed in from the side, gripping Berthold's massive leg and yanking him off balance. The colossal titan stumbled slightly, and that was the opening Armin needed. Now! Armin signaled. Jean and Connie fired a set of thunder spears straight into Bertholdt's nape. The explosion rocked the battlefield. A guttural scream tore from Bertholdt's throat as chunks of his titan body were blasted away. His massive form swayed dangerously, his footing unsteady. Akira took the moment to drive his blade deep into another weak spot, cutting further into the gaps in Bertholdt's armor. Ren didn't hesitate. He ripped Bertholdt's titan down with sheer force, slamming him into the burning ruins below. The impact shook the entire battlefield. Aftermath and reflection as Bertholdt's titan collapsed, steam poured from his body. Soldiers scrambled to secure the area while Levi's squad rushed over to confirm his capture. Akira exhaled, leaning against a broken wall. His clothes were tattered, his energy drained. His spiritual power was dangerously low after so many high-speed maneuvers. Jean walked over, panting. Damn. That was insane. Connie collapsed next to him. I can't believe we survived. Sasha grinned weakly. I'm just glad I didn't get turned into roast meat. Akira chuckled. I dunno, Sasha. Bet you'd taste amazing. Sasha gasped in horror. How could you say that? Jean facepalmed. Akira, don't encourage her weird food-related trauma. Historia, having helped the wounded, approached them. We did it. We actually did it. Akira nodded, looking at the captured form of Bertholdt. Yeah. But it's not over. Everyone turned to him. Levi, covered in blood and wounds, walked over, his expression serious. The beast titan got away. Silence fell over the group. Zeke had escaped. Erwin limped toward them, his arm clutching his side. We won this battle. But the war isn't over. Akira looked at the horizon, where the remnants of the titans had begun to fade. His hands clenched into fists. Something told him this was just the beginning of an even greater fight to come. Chapter 33, Shifting Fate. The dust had barely settled before the weight of everything crashed down on them. I exhaled sharply, rolling my shoulders as I surveyed the aftermath. The colossal titan was down, its massive body steaming into nothingness. Bertholdt lay unconscious, a pathetic shell of the monster that had once towered over us. For the first time since this nightmare began, we had come out on top. And for once, no one from our side had died. Ren stood a few feet away, fists clenched at his sides, his chest rising and falling as if he couldn't believe it. His eyes were locked on Bertholdt, filled with something unreadable, relief, anger, disbelief. Maybe all of it at once. I walked over, nudging his shoulder. You still breathing? His head snapped toward me, and for a second, I thought he'd lash out. But then his shoulders sagged, and he let out a sharp breath. We won. Took you long enough to notice. I smirked, trying to lighten the mood. Thought you were about to pass out on your feet. Ren ignored the jab, eyes scanning the battlefield. The others were still here. Jean was grumbling about how insane that fight had been, Connie was laughing through his exhaustion, and Sasha, of course, was already stuffing food into her mouth. Historia was checking on the wounded, her expression determined. Everyone was alive. Ren's hands loosened. This isn't how things go. We don't win like this. Maybe you've just been losing too much. I crossed my arms, meeting his gaze. Fate isn't some set-in-stone bullshit. We make our own outcomes. Today, we won because we were better. Because you fought smarter, not just harder. His jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Maybe, just maybe, he was starting to get it. But I knew better than to celebrate. This wasn't the end. This wasn't even close to the end. My mind was already running 100 miles an hour, skipping ahead to what came next. The beast titan had escaped. Zeke was still out there, and the war wasn't going to wait for us to catch our breath. If this timeline was still even remotely close to the one I knew, then Marley wasn't just sitting on their hands. They'd come. They'd go hard, and the people here weren't ready for it. Not to mention, Ren. Ren was still Ren. I'd read the entire manga. I knew how this story played out. His hatred, his desperation, his determination, it would drive him to do things even he couldn't imagine right now. Could I stop that? Should I stop that? If I pushed too hard, would I just make things worse? My ADHD-fueled thoughts were darting in every direction, running through 100 different possibilities at once. What if I killed Zeke before he could influence Ren? What if I told Historia the truth about the rumbling? What if I helped Hange and the scouts prepare for the Marleyan invasion? Was I changing things for the better, or was I just delaying the inevitable? It was almost funny. People always complained about Ren's choices in the manga, but standing here, living it, I understood. When you're up against fate, when every path leads to blood, how do you decide which one to take? I sighed, rubbing my temple. One thing at a time. First, we deal with the aftermath of this fight. Then, I start laying the groundwork for what comes next. I glanced back at Ren. He was still staring at Bertolt, something unreadable in his eyes. The gears in his head were turning. I could see it. Maybe he wasn't at the breaking point yet. Maybe I could keep him from getting there. Besides, I continued, glancing at the horizon, we're not done. The beast titan's still out there. Ren's grip on his hands tightened again, but this time, it wasn't in frustration, it was in anticipation. Then we take him down next. Now that was more like it. I smirked. Damn right. For the first time in a long time, Ren looked like someone who still had something to fight for. And I'd be damned if I let him lose that. Chapter 34, The Truth Beneath the Floor. The battle had ended, but the weight of what lay ahead was just beginning to settle in. The once vibrant district of Shiganshina was now a graveyard of ruins and steaming titan corpses. The scent of blood and burnt flesh lingered in the air, mixing with the dampness of the smoldering earth. Soldiers sat on broken walls, tending to wounds, their faces hollow from exhaustion and grief. Yet, amidst the wreckage, a singular objective remained unfinished, the basement. Ren stood at the edge of his former home, his breath steady but his grip on the key tight. Mikaza stood beside him, her unwavering presence as steadying as ever. Armin, though still recovering from the toll of battle, had the gleam of curiosity in his eyes. Levi glanced at the group before shifting his gaze to Akira. Let's move. The faster we do this, the better. Akira nodded, hands tightening into fists. He already knew what was inside. The truth. The past. The reason all of this began. Even so, experiencing it firsthand was different from reading it in the comfort of his old world. This is where everything changes. The descent into the past. Navigating through the debris, they found the remnants of Ren's childhood home. The structure had mostly collapsed, but the underground entry remained intact beneath a pile of rubble. With combined effort, they cleared the way, revealing the wooden hatch leading downward. Ren hesitated for only a second before inserting the key. A metallic click echoed in the silence. The door creaked open. Dust floated in the dim light as they stepped into the underground room. Bookshelves lined the walls, an untouched desk sat in the corner, and 3 books lay neatly secured in a hidden compartment. Ren, Mikaza, and Armin carefully lifted them, hands trembling. Levi stood by the entrance, arms crossed, while Akira watched in silence. This was it. The revelation that shattered the very foundations of their world. Armin flipped open the first book, eyes scanning the neatly written pages. Then, he froze. His hands shook as he turned the book toward the others. A photograph. Not a painting or sketch, but a photograph of a family, Grisha, a woman, and a child. The technology was completely foreign to them. Armin's voice wavered. This means humans exist outside the walls. Mikaza's breath hitched, and Ren clenched his jaw. The very thought contradicted everything they had been taught since birth. Akira sighed internally. And so, the truth starts unraveling. The fallacy of their world. The journals detailed everything. The history of Marley. The oppression of Eldians. The truth about the Titans. Grisha's past, the attack Titan's legacy, and the war beyond the sea. Ren sat in stunned silence, his fingers tightening around the pages as he read. So where? The true devils. The ones everyone wants dead? Mikaza gently placed a hand on his shoulder, but he didn't react. Levi exhaled. It changes nothing. You saw what they did to your mother. To everyone. Whether they hate us or not, survival is still the priority. Akira remained quiet, letting the weight of the revelations settle. He already knew this, yet seeing their reactions firsthand stirred something within him. He glanced at Ren, wondering how this knowledge would change him. Armin, despite the shock, analyzed everything with his sharp intellect. If there are humans beyond the sea, it means we're not alone. It means there's still something beyond this cage. Hope flickered in his voice, but Ren's eyes darkened. Hope? After knowing that they want us dead? Akira finally spoke, voice even. What do you want to do about it? Ren looked at him sharply. What do you mean? Akira shrugged, leaning against the wall. Knowing this, you have 2 choices. Accept defeat and wait for them to come kill you, or fight for a future where we decide what happens next. Ren gritted his teeth. Of course, I want to fight. Akira smirked. Then don't let this break you. Let it fuel you. Ren met his gaze for a long moment before nodding slowly. The fire in his eyes hadn't dimmed, it had only shifted, becoming something more controlled, more determined. Levi watched their interaction before turning back to the books. We take these with us. Erwin needs to see them. A new path forward. The group resurfaced from the basement, the books securely in Levi's possession. Outside, the remaining soldiers gathered, awaiting news. Erwin, though battered and barely standing, approached. What did you find? Levi handed him a book. The truth of our world. And the reason why we've suffered. Erwin's fingers trembled as he flipped through the pages. The emotions playing across his face, shock, disbelief, then a quiet acceptance, spoke louder than words. The soldiers murmured among themselves, sensing the shift in atmosphere. Hanj adjusted her glasses, an intense curiosity burning in her gaze. So, we weren't the last humans? Then that means there's still something out there. For the first time in a long while, a different kind of tension filled the air, not fear, but possibility. Akira took a deep breath, staring at the sky above. This is the real turning point. Now that they know the truth, the war is inevitable. He clenched his fists. And I'll make sure we win. Levi and Akira, a warrior's bond. As the soldiers prepared to return, Levi approached Akira. You handled yourself well in that fight. Akira smirked. I'm good at not dying. Levi huffed. Humphrey. We'll see about that in the next fight. There was a mutual understanding between them. A silent acknowledgement of respect between two warriors who had stood in the thick of battle together. Akira knew Levi wasn't one for unnecessary praise, and that was fine. This was better, a genuine recognition of his worth. Levi crossed his arms. We're gonna need you for what's coming. Don't slack off. Akira grinned. Wouldn't dream of it. System notification. As the group prepared to return to the inner walls, Akira suddenly felt a familiar sensation, a system prompt appearing before his eyes. System alert, mission completed, main quest, uncover the truth. Objective, discover the contents of Grisha's basement. Objective, ensure survival of key members. Bonus, maintain Levi and Ren's trust. Rewards granted, 100,000 system coins. Skill upgrade token, rare, +5 to all stats. Special item, Reiner's hardened plate, can be fused into equipment for enhanced defense. Akira smirked at the rewards. Not bad. The fight was brutal, but at least I got something good out of it. With the truth finally uncovered and the war against Marley looming on the horizon, he knew this was only the beginning. But one thing was certain. He would shape the future with his own hands. Chapter 35, Flames of Resolve. The moment we stepped out of that basement, everything changed. Before, the battle against the Titans was a desperate struggle for survival. A war against mindless beasts that sought nothing but to devour us. But now, that illusion had been shattered. The true enemy wasn't the Titans, it was Marley. Beyond the sea, an entire nation wanted us dead, not because of what we had done, but because of who we were. Because of something as meaningless as bloodline. I already knew all of this. But seeing the weight of the truth crash down on Ren, Armin, and my cause, it hit differently. Ren wasn't broken, but he was close. He stared at the ground, his expression unreadable, his mind likely replaying every moment of his life under this new perspective. Armin was trying to analyze, trying to process what this meant. His breathing was controlled, but the flicker of excitement in his eyes told me he was already thinking ahead. The strategist in him was awakening. And my cause? She wasn't saying anything. Just staying by Ren's side, watching him, ready to be whatever he needed her to be. Erwin was the first to speak, his voice steady but laced with something deeper. This confirms it. We were never fighting for freedom. We were fighting to escape a lie. His hands tightened around the book, but there was no despair in his expression. If anything, I saw something dangerous in his eyes. Hope. The kind of hope that could change the world. The aftermath. As we made our way back toward the waiting soldiers, whispers filled the air. Everyone could tell something had changed. They didn't know what, but they knew. Levi walked beside me, his usual blank expression in place. Not gonna ask what's on your mind? I muttered. He scoffed. I already know what's on your mind. Question is, what do you plan to do? I let out a slow breath, glancing at Ren. His posture was tense, his fists clenched, but there was no hesitation in his eyes. I plan to make sure he doesn't lose himself. I admitted. Levi gave me a sidelong glance. And if he does? I smiled faintly. Then I'll drag him back. Levi snorted. TCH. Bold words. Just don't get yourself killed trying. I didn't plan on it. But I wasn't gonna let Ren walk down that path, either. System notification. The moment we crossed into the secured district, I felt it. That familiar pulse of energy in my chest. System alert, quest completed, main quest, uncover the truth. Objective, discover the contents of Grisha's basement. Objective, ensure survival of key members. Bonus, maintain Levi and Ren's trust. Rewards granted, 100,000 system coins. Skill upgrade token, rare, +5 to all stats. Special item, Reiner's hardened plate, can be fused into equipment for enhanced defense. Nice. I felt the boost instantly, my body felt lighter, my senses sharper. And that upgrade token? That was gonna come in handy. But the biggest reward? The fact that I had changed something. Ren wasn't the same as he was in the manga. The hatred was still there, but now, There was something else mixed in. Something I could use to steer him toward a better future. A private conversation later that night, long after the others had gone to rest, I found Ren sitting alone on a rooftop, staring at the moonlit horizon. I didn't need to ask what he was thinking. Instead, I sat down beside him, letting the silence settle between us. "You already knew, didn't you?" he finally muttered. I raised an eyebrow. "Knew what?" Ren turned to me, his expression unreadable. "That there were people outside the walls. That the world was bigger than this." I exhaled slowly. "What makes you think that?" He gave a humorless chuckle. "You never reacted. Not once. Not to the books, not to the photo. Not even when we learned the truth." Damn. He was sharp. I glanced at him, raising an eyebrow. "What?" Ren didn't look at me, just kept his gaze on the darkened skyline. "Back in the basement. You weren't shocked. Not once. Not even a little. You just stood there." Damn. He really was sharp. If I wasn't careful, he'd figure out that I knew everything long before stepping into that basement. I let out a slow breath and leaned back, resting my weight on my hands. "Is that really surprising?" I asked, keeping my voice light. "I mean, what did you expect me to do? Cry? Scream?" Ren's grip on his knee tightened. "That's not the point." I turned to him, tilting my head slightly, giving him a calculated look, one that showed just enough curiosity to make him doubt himself. "Then what is the point?" His eyes finally snapped to me, searching my face for something. "The point is..." He hesitated, his brows furrowing. I could see the gears turning in his head, trying to connect the dots. But before he could, I threw him off track. I let out a small chuckle, shaking my head. "Ren, come on. Look at me. Do I really seem like the kind of guy who gets emotional over things like that?" I saw the hesitation flicker in his eyes. I leaned forward, voice dropping to something more thoughtful. "Think about it. We've been fighting for our lives since the day we joined the Scouts. We've seen Titans tear people apart, watched friends die, and had to kill to survive. After all that, finding out there's an enemy beyond the walls?" I scoffed. "It's just another fight waiting to happen." Ren stared at me for a long moment. Then, slowly, some of the tension in his shoulders eased. I watched his expression carefully, making sure my words had planted the right seeds. Doubt. Rationalization. A reason for him to let it go. And sure enough, I saw it, he accepted it. He exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "TCH. I guess that makes sense." I smirked, leaning back again. "Of course it does. I'm not heartless, but freaking out over something I can't change? Pointless. What matters is what we do next." That got his attention. Ren's eyes darkened, and this time, there was no hesitation when he spoke. "We fight." I met his gaze, seeing the fire in them. Not blind rage. Not reckless hatred. Controlled determination. And that was exactly what I wanted. I grinned. "Now you're thinking like a warrior." Ren smirked, but there was no humor in it. "TCH. Like I have a choice." I clapped a hand on his shoulder. "You always have a choice. The real question is how far you're willing to go." His jaw tightened. "As far as it takes." Good. I had successfully steered him away from the worst version of himself. Now, I just had to make sure he stayed on this path. The war ahead. The next few days were a blur of preparation. Erwin and Hanj analyzed the journals, strategizing for what came next. Supplies were restocked, weapons repaired. And me? I trained. Levi wasn't one to give compliments, but after seeing me fight, he had expectations. And I wasn't about to let him down. Not when the real war was just beginning. Not when I had a future to shape. System notification. One morning, as I finished another sparring session with Levi, the system chimed again. System alert, hidden skill unlocked, skill, sun breathing, form 6, solar flash strike, a high-speed instant kill technique. Increases reaction speed by 50% for 5 seconds. Can be used once per battle. I exhaled sharply, feeling the new power settle into my body. Levi raised an eyebrow. "You good?" I smirked. "Better than good." Levi rolled his eyes. "TCH. Show me." I grinned, stepping into a stance. "All right then, Captain. Let's see how fast you really are." Chapter 36, The Sparring Match. The sparring ground buzzed with quiet intensity. Scouts paused in their routines, some sneaking glances at what was about to unfold. Levi and I stood across from each other, the air between us charged with unspoken challenge. "You sure you can keep up, Captain?" I smirked, twirling my knife between my fingers. Levi scoffed. "TCH. Try not to embarrass yourself." I activated my spiritual power, letting the energy course through my veins, sharpening my reflexes. Levi's stance barely shifted, but I knew better than to underestimate him. And then he moved. A flicker of motion, faster than most could track. But to me? Predictable. I sidestepped the first strike, barely feeling the breeze as his blade missed by a fraction of an inch. My counter came instantly, a feint to his ribs before twisting low, aiming for his knee. He blocked, pivoting with absurd precision, and for a split second, we locked eyes. His smirk was almost imperceptible. Not bad, he admitted. But not good enough. Before I could react, he twisted midair, using his momentum to slam his blade against mine, forcing me back. I barely held my ground, my feet digging into the dirt. A thrill ran through me. Skill activation, sun breathing, form 6, solar flash strike, my vision sharpened. The world slowed. Levi's next movement, already anticipated. I lunged, shifting my weight in an instant, appearing behind him before he could adjust. A clean strike, stopped inches from his neck. Silence. Then, Levi let out a breath, sheathing his blades. All right. That was decent. Decent. I just pulled off an instant kill technique against humanity's strongest soldier. I grinned. Sounds like a win to me. Levi narrowed his eyes. TCH. Don't get cocky. Do it twice in a row, then we'll talk. The gathered scouts murmured, exchanging impressed glances. I took a step back, letting the skill fade, the after effects leaving my limbs slightly heavy. That was something to be mindful of. Levi, however, was already walking off. Get cleaned up. We move out at dawn. Right. This wasn't just training. We had a war to prepare for. A moment on the wall that night, I found myself on the outer wall, staring at the stars. The calm before the storm. You spacing out, or just pretending to be mysterious? Historia's voice cut through the silence. I glanced over, smirking. Why not both? She sighed, leaning against a stone. Everything's changing so fast. One moment, we're fighting titans. The next, we're up against an entire world. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I let the wind carry my thoughts before speaking. Change isn't always bad. Sometimes, it just means we have a chance to do things differently. Historia frowned, watching me closely. You always talk like you know more than you should. I shrugged. Maybe I just think ahead. Her gaze lingered, but she didn't push further. Instead, she looked back at the night sky. Do you think we can actually win? Against Marley? I let out a slow breath. That depends on how far we're willing to go. She nodded, but there was something distant in her eyes. And you? How far are you willing to go, Akira? I turned away from the sky, meeting her gaze with certainty. As far as it takes. Her lips pressed into a thin line. That's what scares me. That caught me off guard. What do you mean? Historia sighed. Ren's changing. Armin's already thinking of strategies that make my head spin. And you? You throw yourself into fights like nothing else matters. Like you already know how this ends. But what if this war turns you into something you don't recognize? I didn't answer right away. Because for a moment, just a moment, I saw the worry in her eyes. She wasn't just talking about the war. She was talking about me. Historia. I appreciate that. I said, my voice softer. But I'm not planning to lose myself. Then promise me something. She said, turning fully toward me. Promise me that no matter how bad things get, you won't become like them. Like the people who see this as just another war. Another game. Her hands were clenched into fists. She meant it. I exhaled. I promise. She studied my face, then sighed, shoulders relaxing. Good. Because if you ever do, I'll be the first to punch some sense into you. I chuckled. I'll hold you to that. The call to war dawn arrived with a sense of finality. Erwin and Hanj had laid out the plan, and squads were already moving into formation. Ren, Armin, and Mikaza stood at the front, their expressions set with unwavering resolve. I tightened the straps of my gear, checking my blades. Levi's voice cut through the air. Move out. As I moved to follow, Historia grabbed my wrist. Hey. She said, searching my face. Be careful. I gave her a grin. Always. She rolled her eyes but let go, stepping back. This was it. The beginning of the real war. And I was ready to carve my own path through it. Chapter 37, the memory surfaced unbidden, a moment from what felt like a lifetime ago. The moon hung high over the ruined castle, its pale light casting eerie shadows through the crumbling walls of Utgard Castle. The air was thick with the scent of blood and sweat. A ragged group of us, Reiner, Bertolt, Connie, Historia, Mir, and me, stood amidst the wreckage, panting from the relentless onslaught of titans that had breached our makeshift sanctuary. Mir crouched protectively in front of Historia, her body shaking from exhaustion, her titan form barely holding itself together after her desperate battle to protect us. The last titan she had crushed lay motionless, steam rising from its broken form. Historia knelt beside her, gripping her hand, her eyes fierce with worry. "Why? Why would you do something so reckless?" she whispered, her voice breaking. Ymir chuckled, though her voice was strained. "You should be used to it by now." She turned her gaze toward me. "Akira, you knew, didn't you? About me?" I met her stare with calm certainty. "Yeah. And I also knew you wouldn't let them die." Ymir smirked. "TCH. Smartass." Historia looked between us, then back at Ymir. "No more secrets, Ymir. Please." Ymir hesitated. Then, she sighed. "Fine. No more secrets. But that goes for you, too. Right, Historia?" Historia stiffened. Reiner and Connie looked confused, but my gaze remained steady on her. She avoided my eyes, her fingers tightening around Ymir's hand. "Ymir. Don't." Ymir let out a tired laugh. "Why not? Akira already knows. Probably has for a while. Might as well let the others in on the big mystery." Historia's breathing grew uneven. I could see the conflict in her eyes, fear, doubt, but also relief. Finally, she lifted her chin, meeting our gazes with quiet determination. "My real name is Historia Rice. I'm the daughter of the true royal family." Silence. Reiner's eyes widened in shock, and Bertolt stiffened. Connie looked utterly lost, glancing at me for confirmation. I simply nodded. Historia's expression hardened, as if waiting for judgment. But I wasn't about to let her stand alone. I stepped closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. "So what?" She blinked up at me. "What?" I shrugged. "You're still you. Historia or Krista, it doesn't change anything." Her breath hitched, and for a brief moment, the vulnerability in her eyes was unmistakable. Then, in an unexpected move, she lunged forward, wrapping her arms around me in a tight embrace. "Thank you," she whispered. I hesitated before returning the hug. "Anytime." Reiner cleared his throat awkwardly, while Connie still looked like he was catching up. Ymir, though, simply smirked, her exhaustion evident but her eyes warm. "Guess you've got another night, Historia." Historia pulled back slightly, a small, genuine smile on her lips. "Maybe. But I still like the first one best." Her fingers brushed against my hand before she turned back to Ymir, helping her up. The moment lingered between us, an unspoken promise. We weren't alone in this fight. Flashback ends, back to present, the night wind carried the echoes of that memory as I stood atop the wall, Historia by my side. She glanced at me, her voice softer than before. "You're thinking about that night, aren't you?" I nodded. "Hard to forget." That was the moment everything changed. She looked away, her expression distant. "You didn't hesitate? When I told you my name, you just accepted it. That meant more to me than you realize." I chuckled. "I'm not really the judgmental type." Historia turned to me fully, stepping closer. "Akira. I don't say this enough, but thank you for always being there." I raised an eyebrow. "You're getting sentimental on me, Historia." She rolled her eyes, but before I could react, she leaned in and kissed me. It wasn't hurried or fleeting, it was firm, deliberate, and filled with emotions neither of us had ever put into words. When she pulled away, she looked at me with an unreadable expression. That was for being my friend. And for being someone I can trust. I exhaled, my mind catching up to what had just happened. Then, I smirked. "I'd say I should save your life more often, but I think Ymir might fight me for the job." Historia laughed, a genuine, light-hearted sound that felt like a rare treasure in this war-torn world. I didn't know what the future held, but for now, this moment was enough. And when the battle came, I would make damn sure she lived to see a better world. Chapter 38, The underground chamber reeked of damp stone and burning torches. The air was thick with the tension of unspoken truths and concealed intentions. My hands were bound, the rough rope biting into my wrists. Across from me, Ren was in a similar state, restrained, bruised, but far from broken. And beside me, Historia sat in silence, her gaze lowered. Rod Rice stood before us, his looming presence casting long shadows against the walls. Kenny Ackerman leaned lazily against the entrance, his signature hat tilted just enough to hide his smirk. "Historia," Rod said, his voice smooth yet insidious, "it's time you embraced your true purpose. You are the rightful heir to the throne. Only you can bring order to this wretched world." Historia flinched but didn't look up. I could see her fists clenching in her lap. She was scared, but more than that, she was conflicted. Ren gritted his teeth. "Don't listen to him. He's just using you." Rod continued as if he hadn't heard. "Your mother's death was unfortunate, but necessary. The power within Ren, what he holds, Must be returned to the Rice bloodline. It is your duty. My body tensed. So you want Historia to inject herself, turn into a titan, and eat Ren? That's your grand plan? Rod turned his gaze to me, regarding me like a mere inconvenience. It is the only way. You wouldn't understand, boy. I smirked despite myself. Oh, I understand perfectly. You're a coward who let his entire family die instead of taking action himself. And now you want Historia to do what you never could. Rod's face twitched at that. Good. Historia finally spoke, her voice small but steady. And if I do this? What happens then? Rod's expression softened, as if he truly believed in his own righteousness. Then you will save humanity. That's a lie. I said sharply. You're not saving humanity. You're just repeating the same cycle that's been going on for generations. You want to lock people in this cage forever. Historia's grip on her dress tightened. I saw it, the struggle, the war waging in her heart. But she needed to hear it. I turned my full attention to her. Historia, listen to me. You get to choose who you are. Not him. Not me. Not anyone else. You don't have to live for the sake of a family that abandoned you. You can live for yourself. She finally looked at me, her eyes wide, uncertain. But if I don't do this, then we'll find another way. My voice was firm, unshakable. Together. Her lips parted slightly as if she wanted to say more, but before she could, Kenny let out an exaggerated yawn. Touching speech and all, but I've got a job to do. The moment shattered as he lunged forward, his omnidirectional mobility gear whirring. I barely had time to react before my instincts kicked in. Skill activation, spiritual power enhancement, my muscles surged with power, and with one fluid motion, I snapped the ropes binding my wrists. I spun, kicking the incoming blade just enough to deflect it. Kenny's eyes widened slightly before his grin widened. Well, ain't you full of surprises? The fight exploded into chaos. The battle, blades clashed in bursts of steel and sparks. The underground chamber became a whirlwind of motion as Kenny's squad flooded in, omnidirectional mobility gear wires crisscrossing through the air. Levi was already tearing through them like a storm, his precise movements cutting down enemies before they even knew what hit them. I dodged left, barely avoiding a bullet, and countered with a slash, severing a gunman's wires. He plummeted, crashing into the stone floor below. Ren was still restrained, struggling against his binds. Historia, however, had taken hold of a fallen blade. She turned to Rod with something in her eyes I hadn't seen before, resolve. I won't be your pawn anymore. Before he could react, she swung the sword downward, shattering the injection vial in his hands. The liquid splattered uselessly against the floor. Historia. Rod howled, his face contorted with desperation. She turned to me, breathing heavily. We have to stop him. I nodded. Leave it to me. Rod scrambled backward, reaching for another vial, but I was already on him. I struck, my knife slicing across his wrist, sending the remaining serum flying. But the bastard was desperate, he lunged, smashing his face into the spilled fluid. The transformation was instant. The chamber quaked as Rod Rice began to expand grotesquely, his body stretching into an unnatural, monstrous form. Heat erupted from his growing mass, forcing us all to retreat. Shit, he's going full Titan. Levi landed beside me, barely breaking a sweat. We end this now. The final strike, Rod's Titan form was enormous, his bloated, malformed body dragging itself toward the surface. He was heading for the walls, aiming to devour everything in sight. I have a plan. Historia said, looking straight at me. I smirked. I like the sound of that. We launched into action. As the scouts bombarded Rod with explosives, Historia and I maneuvered our way up his back, cutting through steaming flesh. The heat was unbearable, the stench of burning muscle nauseating, but we didn't stop. Historia reached the nape first. With one final, determined leap, she plunged her blade deep into the exposed flesh, carving through with all her strength. Rod's Titan let out a deafening, dying roar before its massive body crumbled, disintegrating into steam and falling debris. Historia landed gracefully on the wreckage, breathing hard. The people below watched in stunned silence before a single voice cried out, "All hail Historia!" The cheers erupted like wildfire. Historia turned to me, her expression unreadable. Then, without hesitation, she stepped forward and kissed me. It was brief but fierce, carrying unspoken gratitude, relief, and something deeper. When she pulled away, she whispered, "Thank you, Akira. For everything." I let out a breath, a slow grin forming. Anytime. Back to present, the wall, Historia and I stood side by side, the wind pool against our skin. "You always believed in me," she said quietly. "Even when I didn't." I glanced at her, smiling. "That's what friends are for." She scoffed, but her fingers brushed against mine, lingering there. For once, there was no war. No duty. Just us. And that was enough. Chapter 39, The Truth and the Future. The walls loomed over the city, their sheer size a constant reminder of how small humanity had been made to feel. But after what we found in the basement, that illusion was gone. The world wasn't just bigger, it was crueler, harsher, and far more complicated than most of them could comprehend. Not me, though. I already knew. As we walked through the stone streets of Walsena, I felt Historia's presence beside me, quieter than usual. I could tell the revelations still weighed on her. She already knew about the basement's secrets. I had told her long before we even stepped foot in there. And yet, knowing wasn't the same as seeing it with her own eyes. "You okay?" I asked, breaking the silence. She exhaled, hugging herself slightly. I knew what we'd find, but it still hurts. I nodded. It always does. She stopped walking for a moment, her gaze lingering on my face. "How are you so calm?" I gave her a small smirk. "Because I expected this." "That's not what I meant," she murmured, shaking her head. "You knew. You always know. More than anyone else, more than you should. But even after learning the truth, you haven't changed." I just shrugged. "The world being bigger doesn't change what I want, Historia. I don't fight for some grand cause. I fight for the people I care about." She stared at me for a moment before exhaling a soft laugh. "You make it sound so simple." "It is." But before she could press further, footsteps approached. "My causa." Her dark eyes flickered toward me, studying me the way she had been ever since the Reiner and Berthold reveal. I didn't need a system notification to tell me she had started paying closer attention. "We need to regroup," she said simply. "Levi and the others are waiting." I nodded, exchanging a glance with Historia before following my causa. I could feel Historia moving closer beside me, as if unconsciously drawn to my presence. That was good. The room was dimly lit, filled with the core members of the Survey Corps. Levi's old squad, Alla, Petra, Eld, and Gunter, stood with arms crossed, their expressions unreadable. Hange leaned over the table, her excitement barely restrained despite the grim news. Erwin stood at the head of the table, his sharp gaze sweeping across the room. "We need to decide our next move." Ren clenched his fists. "We have to take the fight to Marley." I studied him carefully. There was fire in his eyes, but not the same blind rage he once had. He was still the same Ren who had hope, who wanted freedom, who trusted in his squad. The fact that Levi's original team was still alive had changed things. Levi turned his attention to me. "You've been quiet." I met his gaze, keeping my expression neutral. "Just listening." Levi narrowed his eyes slightly. "We don't have time for you to sit back and observe." "What's your take?" I leaned against the wall, crossing my arms. "We could try diplomacy, but it's laughable. Marley won't negotiate, they've already decided we're devils that need to be wiped out. If we sit back, they'll bring the fight to us." Erwin nodded slightly. "Then a preemptive strike?" I turned my attention to Ren instead of answering Erwin. "That depends." "What do you want, Ren?" The room fell into silence. Everyone watched him. Ren inhaled sharply. "I want to end this. But I don't want to lose myself doing it." A good answer. It meant he hadn't fallen into pure vengeance yet. That meant there was still room to shape him, to keep him from becoming that Ren, the one who threw everything away in the name of destruction. I smirked. "Then let's make sure you don't." My causa's eyes flickered toward me again, something unreadable in her gaze. Historia, too, studied me. They were watching, noticing, wondering how I always seemed to be a step ahead. That was fine. Because the war was coming. And this time, I wouldn't just fight in it. I would shape it. Chapter 40, Threads of Fate. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut through. Ren's words still hung in the air, and all eyes remained locked on him. He wanted to end this war, but he feared losing himself in the process. A noble thought, but nobility alone wouldn't win wars. I leaned back against the cold stone wall, watching the shifting emotions on everyone's faces. Some thoughtful, some uncertain, but all waiting for a voice to guide them. That was the beauty of moments like these. Uncertainty bred desperation, and desperation made people cling to those who seemed to have answers. People like me. A simple smile formed on my lips. "Then we shape this war, Ren. We fight on our terms." Levi's sharp gaze flickered toward me, his eyes narrowing slightly. He wasn't the type to trust easily, but he had learned to value results over intentions. That worked in my favor. "Speak plainly, Kurogen," Levi said, arms crossed. "What's your angle?" I met his gaze with a neutral expression. "The moment we go after Marley, we're playing by their rules. They have the advantage, numbers, technology, the world's support. But we have something they don't." Erwin leaned forward. "And that is?" I exhaled slowly, letting the weight of my words sink in before speaking. Unpredictability. Right now, the world sees us as desperate devils behind the walls, waiting to be exterminated. They think they have us cornered, which means they're preparing for a straightforward war. But what if we change the rules? What if we make them question everything they think they know about us? I could see the gears turning in Erwin's mind. He was always drawn to unconventional strategies, the kind that made his opponents uncomfortable. Elaborate, he said, his voice measured. I let my gaze sweep across the room, making sure I had their full attention. Instead of rushing into an all-out battle, we move in the shadows. We plant seeds of doubt, cause fractures within their own people, manipulate their leaders, and spread misinformation. We force them to turn against each other before we ever strike. And when the time comes to act, they'll be too divided to stop us. Hange's eyes gleamed with interest. Psychological warfare. Interesting. But do we have the resources for that? I smirked. We don't need many resources, just the right people in the right places. We can create symbols, martyrs, narratives that make the people of Marley question their own side. A few key assassinations, some well-placed rumors, and suddenly, their government isn't fighting us, it's fighting itself. I could feel the shift in the room. Even those skeptical of me were listening. This was how you control the room, give them a vision, something grand yet achievable, something that made them feel like they were a part of something greater. My Kaza watched me quietly, her gaze unreadable. She had always been wary of me, though lately, that wariness had softened into something more curious. She was starting to see that I wasn't just strong, I was dangerous in ways she had never considered. Historia, too, was focused on me. Her hands were folded in front of her, her blue eyes reflecting the flickering candlelight. She already knew how my mind worked, yet each time I spoke like this, she seemed to realize just how much deeper the layers went. And what would that make us? Ren asked suddenly, his voice quieter but firm. Would we still be fighting for our freedom, or would we just be playing the same games as our enemies? I chuckled. Ren, wars aren't won by who's morally superior. They're won by who survives. We don't have the luxury of playing fair. Ren clenched his fists, but he didn't argue. He was beginning to understand. Good. Levi sighed, rubbing his temples. TCH. I hate to admit it, but the brat has a point. We can't afford a direct fight, not yet. We'll consider this strategy for now, but the moment I see it going sideways, we drop it. Understood? I gave a small nod, feigning agreement. Levi was a good leader, practical, efficient, but he wasn't like me. He saw things in terms of tactics and execution. I saw them in terms of narratives and control. And right now, I was weaving a story where I was the unseen force shaping history. The meeting continued with discussions on logistics, supply chains, and gathering intelligence, but my mind was already steps ahead. I had planted the idea, and it was growing. Soon, they would believe it was their own. As the meeting adjourned, people started to leave in small groups, murmuring amongst themselves. My Kaza lingered for a moment, her sharp eyes still locked on me. You're different lately. I tilted my head slightly. How so? She frowned, as if searching for the right words. You're more involved. You used to stay in the background more. Now you're leading. I shrugged. Maybe I just realized it's time to step up. She didn't seem convinced, but she didn't push further. Instead, she turned to leave, though not before glancing back at me one last time. I watched her go before stepping outside into the cold night air. The stars above Wall Sina twinkled, oblivious to the shifting tides below. Historia appeared at my side. You meant every word back there, didn't you? I smirked. Of course. But that doesn't mean I showed all my cards. She sighed, shaking her head. Sometimes, I wonder what you're really after. I looked at her then, letting just a flicker of my true thoughts show in my eyes. The same thing as you, Historia. A world where we're free. She held my gaze for a long moment before nodding. Then let's make sure it happens. As she walked away, I let out a breath and closed my eyes for a brief moment. I was getting used to this world. To the shadows. To the weight of guiding people without them ever realizing it. And soon, the war wouldn't just be between Marley and the Eldians. It would be a war shaped by me. Chapter 41, Akira War Strategy. The night air was crisp, the flickering lanterns lining the streets casting long, wavering shadows. I stood on the balcony of our temporary base within Wall Sina, gazing over the city. A city that had long lived in blissful ignorance, shielded by its walls. But ignorance was no longer an option. Not for them, and certainly not for us. My mind was already 5 steps ahead, weaving the threads of influence, shaping the narrative that would soon define the war. I had planted the first seed in that meeting: doubt, curiosity, and most importantly, trust. Even Levi, sharp as he was, had conceded to the logic of my plan. That was enough. For now. Footsteps approached from behind. I didn't turn, I already knew who it was. Historia. You never sleep, she murmured, stepping beside me. Neither do you, I replied with a faint smirk, glancing at her. She sighed, folding her arms. Because I can't afford to. Not when so much is at stake. I nodded. You're right. Which is why you need to solidify your position as queen. Your influence is growing, but it's not absolute yet. Her eyes flickered toward me, cautious yet intrigued. And what do you suggest? I turned fully toward her. Symbols are powerful. Right now, the people see you as a beacon of hope, but hope alone won't win their loyalty. Strength will. They need to see you taking charge, making real decisions, not just being a figurehead. She frowned. You mean war? No. I corrected. I mean control. Start small, policies, strategic alliances, rewarding those who support you. Make it so that the people have more faith in you than they ever had in the royal family before. And when the time comes to strike against Marley, you'll have a nation willing to follow you without hesitation. She exhaled, her breath visible in the cold night air. You make it sound so simple. It is. I said, my voice quiet yet firm. If you let me handle the details. She studied me for a long moment. Then, she nodded. Do what you need to. A small victory. But a necessary one. The next morning, I found myself in the Survey Corps weaponry development sector. Hange had brought me here under the pretense of discussing new innovations, but I had my own reasons for being here. I ran my fingers along the cold metal of a prototype rifle, studying its craftsmanship. It was primitive compared to Marley's technology, but that was about to change. I opened my system shop discreetly, my eyes scanning the available blueprints. There it was, the perfect choice. Design, semi-automatic rifle, 150,000 system coins, expensive, but worth it. Without hesitation, I purchased it, the knowledge flooding into my mind instantly. The schematics, the mechanisms, the refinements, all of it was now mine. Hange tilted her head at me. Something catch your eye? I smiled. Actually, yes. I've been working on a design of my own. Her eyes lit up with curiosity. Oh? Show me. I grabbed a piece of parchment and quickly sketched out the internal structure, the firing mechanism, the efficiency improvements over current rifles. Hange leaned in, her excitement growing with every stroke of my pencil. This is incredible, she whispered. Where did you learn this? I chuckled. Just something I've been working on in my spare time. Allah-oh, who had been standing nearby, scoffed. TCH. A fighter like you, inventing weapons? Since when? I didn't even need to respond. Hange smacked his shoulder. Since now, obviously. If this works, it could give us a massive advantage against Marley's forces. Levi, who had entered at some point, folded his arms and eyed me skeptically. You never cease to surprise, do you? I met his gaze. Wouldn't be any fun if I did. He clicked his tongue but didn't argue. That was another thing about Levi, he valued results. And soon, these weapons would provide exactly that. The following weeks passed in a blur. The Survey Corps engineers worked tirelessly to bring my designs to life, and as expected, Hange's enthusiasm spread like wildfire. Erwin saw the potential and approved resources for mass production. And through it all, I ensured Historia was at the center of these developments, solidifying her role as a leader who brought tangible change. With new weapons in our hands, the playing field was shifting. Marley wouldn't know what hit them. But first, there was something else to take care of. Sasha's fate. The airship mission loomed near, and with it, the moment where Gabi would strike. But not this time. Not on my watch. The night before our departure, I moved through the corridors of our base with silent footsteps, my senses sharp, my spiritual power surging just beneath my skin. I reached Gabi's quarters and slipped inside. She lay there, fast asleep, the naive determination of a child soldier etched across her face. It was almost pitiful. Almost. With a precise motion, I struck the back of her neck, rendering her unconscious. She wouldn't be waking up anytime soon. Mission accomplished. I stepped back, taking a deep breath. Everything was still going according to plan. Sasha would live, and Gabi. Well, she would have plenty of time to reconsider her choices. As I left the room, a quiet chuckle escaped my lips. I had played my part perfectly, acting as the concerned ally, the trusted comrade. And when Sasha remained alive, when the airship returned without tragedy, it would only further cement my place among them. All according to plan. And soon, the war itself would be shaped by my hands. Chapter 42, Turning the Tide. The night was calm, but within the walls of the Survey Corps temporary base, preparations were in full swing. The upcoming assault on Marley was no longer just a distant possibility, it was imminent. The gears of war were turning, and I had ensured that I was one of the hands spinning them. System notification, significant change in fate detected, Sasha Blau survives, reward granted, 50,000 system coins skill, Predator's instinct, B rank, enhances reaction speed and danger sense in combat. A small smirk tugged at my lips. Preventing Sasha's death had been a simple task, but the rewards made it all the more satisfying. The system acknowledged my role in shaping events, and I would continue to do so. As I walked through the dimly lit corridors, I could hear murmurs of anticipation. Soldiers whispered about our upcoming mission, about our chances against Marley, about the new weapons that had recently entered production. My weapons. In the armory, Hange and her engineers were working tirelessly, finalizing the first batch of semi-automatic rifles. They marveled at the efficiency, at the sheer increase in firepower. The Survey Corps had always been outgunned by Marley's technology, but now the tables were turning. Akira. Hange called out, her voice laced with excitement. You need to see this. I stepped forward, glancing at the newly assembled weapon in her hands. It was a thing of beauty, sleek, deadly, efficient. A proper rifle, not the outdated flintlocks or cannons Paratus had relied on for too long. Hange handed it to me, and I tested the weight, the balance. Perfect? It works flawlessly, she said, her eyes gleaming. The recoil is manageable, the firing rate is unmatched, and the precision. We've never had something like this before. Levi, standing off to the side, watched with his usual unreadable expression. And you're sure these won't just make us overconfident? I smirked. Confidence isn't the issue. The problem has always been that we were fighting an uphill battle. Now, we have an edge. Levi huffed, crossing his arms. TCH. We'll see how much of an edge it gives us when we're in the middle of battle. Fair enough, I said, setting the rifle down. But you'll see soon enough. The battlefield isn't just about skill anymore. It's about adaptation. Levi didn't respond, but his silence was answer enough. He knew I was right, even if he wouldn't admit it. The following night, the mission commenced. We boarded the airship, the looming lights of Marley in the distance signaling the battlefield we were about to step into. This was it, the moment where history would take a different turn. As I sat among the others, I felt a familiar presence beside me, my Casa. Her usual stoic demeanor was tinged with something else. Concern? You're quieter than usual, she murmured. I chuckled lightly. Just thinking. She studied me, her sharp gaze searching for something. You always think too much. I turned to meet her eyes, my voice softer. And you always fight too much. Maybe we balance each other out. For a brief second, her expression faltered. But before she could say anything, the airship's doors opened. The time for words was over. It was time for action. The moment we landed, chaos erupted. Explosions, gunfire, the clash of steel, it was war in its purest form. The warriors of Marley fought with desperation, but we weren't the same people they had faced before. I moved through the battlefield with lethal efficiency. My knife sliced through enemy ranks, my enhanced body and spiritual power making me faster, stronger. My mind was clear, my calculations precise. Every move I made served a purpose, every action setting the stage for what was to come. Then, amidst the carnage, I spotted her. Pikefinger, the cart titan. She was an asset, one of the most intelligent of Marley's forces. If I played this right, I could turn her into something else entirely. An ally. I watched as she fought, her titan form weaving through enemy lines with tactical precision. I needed to find the right moment, the right opening. And then, there it was. A single mistake. A vulnerability. I moved swiftly, faster than she could react. In one smooth motion, I was on top of her titan form, blade pressed against the nape of her neck. Yield. I murmured, just loud enough for her to hear. Or die. She hesitated. For the first time, I saw genuine uncertainty in her eyes. She was calculating her chances, weighing her options. I leaned in slightly. You're smart, Pike. Smarter than the rest of them. You know this war isn't as simple as they want you to believe. Her breathing was heavy, but she didn't answer immediately. Think about it. I continued, my voice calm despite the chaos around us. Marley doesn't care about you. You're a tool to them, nothing more. But here? You could be something greater. She gritted her teeth. And you expect me to betray my people? I expect you to survive. I corrected. And I expect you to choose the winning side. Another moment of hesitation. Then, slowly. She nodded. System notification, enemy converted to ally, Pikefinger, 100,000 system coins item, Titan control serum, temporarily enhances control over Titan abilities for 10 minutes. Influence in Paratus increased. I smiled. Another piece on the board, right where I wanted it. System notification: your numerous reflex-based and instinctual skills can now be integrated into a singular form. Would you like to proceed? I didn't hesitate. Yes, a wave of power surged through me, an indescribable feeling of clarity, lightness, and absolute control. My senses sharpened to an impossible degree, my body moving in perfect harmony with my mind. Ultra Instinct Level 2 acquired, I smirked. This war was already mine. The battle raged on, but the tides had already begun to shift. And soon, Marley wouldn't just be fighting the Survey Corps. They'd be fighting a war they never saw coming. All according to plan. Chapter 43, a war never seen before. The battlefield of Liberia was chaos incarnate. The scent of blood and gunpowder hung heavy in the air. Titans clashed, screams echoed, and gunfire rattled through the ruined streets. The Survey Corps had never wielded such firepower before, and Marley was reeling from the sheer ferocity of the attack. Soldiers, once used to their technological supremacy, found themselves gunned down with ruthless precision. And in the midst of it all, I stood, unshaken, my senses sharper than they had ever been. Ultra Instinct Level 2 acquired, the power coursed through me like liquid lightning. Every movement felt effortless, my body acting on its own with impossible precision. Bullets whizzed past, yet I leaned, sidestepped, and twisted through the storm of metal as if the world itself was moving slower just for me. My knife, sleek and hungry, found the throats of enemies before they could even comprehend their deaths. Levi had once been a demon in battle, a force that no man could match. But at this moment, I knew, I was something beyond human. The tides had turned. The collapse of Marley. The Survey Corps advanced like an unstoppable tide, cutting down Marleyan forces with brutal efficiency. The new semi-automatic rifles proved devastating, allowing Paratus soldiers to engage in mid-range combat with overwhelming firepower. But amidst the chaos, there was one key target left standing: Zeke Yeager, the Beast Titan. The battle against Zeke roared, his Titan form towering over the battlefield, hurling massive chunks of debris toward the advancing Paratus forces. The sheer force of his throws sent buildings crumbling and turned soldiers into red mist upon impact. TCH. He's making a mess. Levi muttered beside me, gripping his blades tighter. We take him down now. Agreed. I said, already calculating our approach. The moment Zeke's arm moved to throw another boulder, Levi vanished from sight, his vertical maneuvering gear launching him forward at breakneck speed. I followed, my enhanced speed from spiritual power letting me keep up with him. We weaved through the battlefield in perfect sync, evading falling debris with ease. Levi struck first, his blade slicing deep into Zeke's throwing arm. The Beast Titan howled in pain, the massive chunk of rock falling harmlessly as his grip failed. But we weren't done yet. I blinked forward with Ultra Instinct, appearing directly on Zeke's shoulder, my knife slashing through the tendons at his nape. He tried to grab me, but my body moved before he could, dodging effortlessly, striking again. Zeke gritted his teeth, desperation flashing in his golden eyes. You damn devils. Devils. Levi sneered, appearing in front of him in a blur of speed. You haven't even seen hell yet. Levi's blades flashed, a whirlwind of slashes that tore through Zeke's hardened skin. Blood sprayed in thick streams, his Titan body weakening rapidly. He tried to counter with a desperate swing, but I was already a step ahead. I drove my knife directly into his Titan's eye, blinding him. You're too slow. With a final coordinated attack, Levi and I struck simultaneously, one blade severing Zeke's tendons, the other stabbing straight into his nape. The Beast Titan collapsed, its once overwhelming presence reduced to nothing more than a twitching mess of steaming flesh. Zeke coughed violently as he emerged from his Titan body, his real form weakened and exposed. I knelt beside him, blade resting against his throat, my voice low. You want freedom. I want victory. Work with me, and you'll get both. His golden eyes widened. He was a tactician, a manipulator. But now, for the first time, he realized, he wasn't the only one. System notification, enemy converted to ally, Zeke Yeager, reward, 150,000 system coins. Skill, Titan Control Mastery, a rank, allows a user to exert superior control over Titan abilities. A smile crept onto my lips. Another piece on the board. Ren's warpath and my causes fight across the battlefield. Ren rampaged in his attack Titan form, tearing through Marley's forces with merciless efficiency. This was the Ren of the future, the one who had seen the weight of the world and decided to carve his own destiny. But there was something different now. Something that had changed. Me. My Kaza fought alongside the others, her blades a whirlwind of steel and blood. But this time, she wasn't by my side. Instead, I moved in perfect tandem with Levi, our movements almost instinctual. We didn't need words. A simple glance, a subtle motion, each was enough to signal the next move. It was as if we had fought together for years. You're keeping up. Levi noted casually, mid-swing as he decapitated a Marleyan soldier. TCH. I'm carrying you. I shot back, twisting through the air to slice down an enemy aiming at him from behind. For the first time, Levi smirked. But then, Ren roared, his titan form sending debris flying as he crushed another enemy beneath his hand. And in that instant, I knew what was coming next. Porco Gallard, the Jaw Titan, lunged at Ren in a desperate attempt to turn the tide. His claws gleamed in the dim light, inches away from tearing through Ren's neck. I moved before I even thought. My body blurred, ultra instinct activating instinctively. One moment I was standing beside Levi, the next, I was on Porco's back, my knife driving deep into the soft flesh of his nape. He shrieked, his titan form convulsing. Porco. I whispered, my voice a ghost in his ears. Your brother died for a cause that never cared for you. Die knowing that you were just another pawn. His breath hitched. Then I twisted the blade. The Jaw Titan collapsed, its body steaming as Porco's consciousness faded. System notification, enemy slain, Porco Gallard, reward, 80,000 system coins. Item, Titan Essence Extract, grants user a permanent increase in physical capabilities, another piece removed from the board. Pike's inner struggle far from the main battlefield, Pikefinger sat in the shadows, watching everything unfold. Her Titan powers were useless here. The Paratus forces had struck with terrifying precision. They had anticipated every move, countered every advantage. And the one leading them. Akira Kurogane. She had heard of him before. The Phantom Soldier, the strategist who never seemed to lose. Now, she had seen him in action. He and Levi had dismantled Zeke like it was nothing. Her hands clenched into fists. Marley won't win this, will he? She whispered. She thought of everything, of her comrades, of the lies she had been fed since childhood, of the people she had fought for. Did Marley deserve her loyalty? Her heart pounded as she realized the answer. No. A single tear escaped down her cheek as she made her decision. System notification, character affection increased, Pikefinger, plus 30, the end of Liberio. The battle was nearly over. Marley's military had collapsed. Pike was now an informant, Zeke was under my control, and Ren was still Ren. The fires of war reflected in his green eyes as he surveyed the destruction. This is just the beginning. He muttered. They will never stop hunting us. I placed a hand on his shoulder, my grip firm. Then we make sure they never can. He looked at me, searching for something. Reassurance? Validation? I wasn't sure. But for the first time, he nodded, accepting my words. The airship arrived, ready to extract us. The mission was complete. But as I stepped aboard, feeling the weight of victory settle, the system gave one final notification. System notification, you have altered the fate of this world irreversibly. New threat unlocked, the last Titan. I frowned. The game had just changed again. And I couldn't wait. Chapter 44, a future unwritten. The airship hummed with a quiet tension as it soared over the burning remains of Liberio. Smoke curled into the sky, painting the world in hues of destruction. Below us, thousands lay dead, Marley's forces shattered, their proud warriors nothing more than corpses littered across the city streets. The Survey Corps had won, but victory tasted strange. Ren sat near the edge, his expression unreadable, the distant city lights reflecting in his eyes. He had done what he set out to do, but something felt off. This was the first time in years that the future wasn't aligning exactly with what he had foreseen. I leaned back against the cold metal wall, feeling the familiar sensation of the system churning in the background. System notification, you have altered the fate of this world irreversibly. New threat unlocked, the unknown path, a quiet warning. A shift in the story. But what did it mean? Levi was watching me from the other side of the cabin. He had been silent since we boarded, his sharp eyes dissecting every detail of my movements. Finally, he spoke. You knew how this would play out. I met his gaze. I had a plan. TCH. He crossed his arms, looking unimpressed. You planned for Zeke to surrender? I smiled slightly. I planned to make him believe surrendering was his best option. Levi exhaled through his nose, leaning back. He understood. Even if he hated Zeke, he knew having him alive was more useful than dead. For now. Across the airship, Pike sat with her arms wrapped around her knees. She hadn't spoken since we left Liberio. The woman who had always been so composed, so effortlessly intelligent, now looked fragile. Vulnerable. I moved toward her, crouching beside her seat. Regretting your choice? Her dark eyes flickered to me. No. Then what's wrong? She hesitated. I spent my life believing Marley was the only future for Eldians. That they would protect us if we proved our loyalty. She looked down at her hands. But they never planned to protect us, did they? I didn't answer immediately. She already knew the truth. No. I said finally. They only needed weapons. And you were one. She let out a small laugh, bitter, tired. Then what does that make me now? I studied her, gauging the shift in her emotions. Pikefinger was too smart to wallow in despair for long. She was adapting, reassessing her future. That was what made her valuable. You're free. I told her. You can decide what to do with that freedom. Her fingers clenched, then slowly relaxed. She didn't say anything, but I saw it, the first cracks in her old loyalty. System notification, character affection increased, Pikefinger, +20, one more piece shifting into place. Return to Paratus. The airship landed in Shiganshina, where the aftermath of our mission was already unfolding. People cheered when they saw us, celebrating the fall of Marley's warriors, the death of their oppressors. But they had no idea what was coming. Historia was waiting at the docks, her golden hair catching the dim torchlight. She greeted me first, her expression softer than before. You're safe, she said quietly. Of course. I smirked. Did you think I wouldn't be? She didn't answer immediately, but there was something new in her eyes, something that hadn't been there before. System notification, character affection increased, Historia Rice, +15, Ren pushed past, his gaze fixed ahead. He had no time for reunions. He had a war to prepare for. But there was hesitation in his movements. Levi noticed too. He's thinking too much. I watched as Ren walked away. He wasn't breaking down, wasn't losing hope, he was questioning something. The certainty he once had was shaken. He was seeing things unfold differently than he remembered, and it was making him cautious. A storm brewing. Days passed. The world was shifting. Reports flooded in, Marley wasn't recovering. Their military was shattered, their leadership scrambling. The Warhammer Titan's absence had left a power vacuum, and factions were already rising to seize control. But one report stood out. An unknown deviation in Ren's future memories. Ren sat across from me in an empty hall, fingers laced together, expression serious. Akira. He said slowly, voice thoughtful rather than accusatory. You weren't supposed to be this important. I raised an eyebrow. Oh? I've seen everything. He murmured, leaning back. Or, I thought I had. But ever since you showed up, I keep seeing things I wasn't meant to. System notification, major narrative divergence detected. I stayed silent, waiting for him to continue. I saw the future, Akira. He admitted. A path where I knew every step. But now, it's changing. His gaze met mine. You're changing it. I tilted my head. Is that a bad thing? He exhaled. I don't know yet. For the first time, Ren Yeager wasn't moving forward with absolute certainty. He was adapting. Reassessing. And that meant I had just gained another advantage. The game had changed again. And I was ready. Chapter 45, The Lion and the Serpent. The sea breeze was sharp, carrying the scent of salt and blood. The last embers of battle had long since died out, but the taste of war still lingered in the air. Shiganshina had become the heart of Eldia's resurgence, and at its center stood Historia. She sat in the royal chamber, illuminated by the golden light of an oil lamp. Her hands rested on the wooden table, fingers interlocked as she stared at the map before her. The faint flicker of firelight played across her face, casting shifting shadows over her determined expression. I leaned against the doorway, watching her in silence for a moment before stepping inside. You look like someone carrying the weight of a kingdom on their shoulders. She exhaled softly, a small smile grazing her lips. Because I am. I walked closer, pulling out a chair across from her and sitting down. Then let me carry it with you. She met my gaze, searching, measuring. Historia was no fool, she knew the game we were playing. But that didn't mean she wasn't drawn into it, little by little. System notification, Historia Rice's affection +15, she glanced back at the map, running a delicate finger over the outline of the walls. Zeke is still alive. That means the other nations will eventually learn of the power he carries. I nodded. Which is why he's no longer a variable. Her brow furrowed slightly. What do you mean? I smirked. Zeke is now a crippled serpent. His power is sealed, his plan shattered. We'll use him, not as a weapon, but as bait. The world will watch, waiting for him to strike, not realizing the real danger isn't him anymore. She hesitated before nodding slowly. And what happens when they do realize? I reached across the table, gently taking her hand in mine. She stiffened but didn't pull away. By then, it won't matter. Because Eldia will no longer be prey. We will be the lions. System notification, Historia Rice's affection +25, the shackled beast deep beneath the city. Zeke sat against the cold stone wall of his cell, his golden eyes dimmed with contemplation. The Titan disabling shackles still clung to his wrists, a constant reminder of his new reality. Levi stood outside the bars, arms crossed, a smirk tugging at his lips. Not so confident now, are you, monkey? Zeke exhaled, rubbing his wrists. You act like I've lost everything. I stepped forward, hands in my pockets. Because you have. His gaze flickered to me, wary, calculating. And yet, you haven't killed me. I crouched, resting my forearms on my knees. Because you're still useful. The world still fears you, Zeke. As long as they believe you hold the key to the founding titan, they won't act rashly. He frowned. You're using me as a decoy. I smirked. Exactly. Zeke chuckled, shaking his head. And what do I get in return? I stood, my shadow stretching over him. Your life. He fell silent. Levi scoffed. TCH. I'd say that's more than you deserve. The Phantom Army Marley's remnants had scattered, but they weren't defeated. Along the coast, the survivors regrouped, licking their wounds, searching for a way to retaliate. But I wouldn't give them the chance. Standing atop the walls, I watched the horizon where the sea met the sky. Ren stood beside me, silent, brooding. He finally spoke. Is this really necessary? I turned to him, my expression unreadable. You tell me. If Marley had the chance, do you think they'd show mercy? His jaw clenched. He knew the answer. My Kaza and Armin stood nearby, watching the conversation unfold. Armin stepped forward. There has to be another way. If we strike first, we'll be proving them right, that we're devils. I sighed, placing a hand on Armin's shoulder. Armin, you're a genius, but this isn't a game of morality. This is survival. If you give your enemy time to recover, they'll return stronger. And next time, they won't hesitate? Ren exhaled, eyes darkening. Then we finish this. I smiled. System notification, Ren Yeager's hesitation -15, system notification, Ren Yeager's resolve +20, to the last man the attack came at dawn. Marley's remnants, scattered and desperate, had fortified a coastal fortress. They thought they had time. They were wrong. As our forces advanced, I moved like a ghost through the battlefield, my long knife gleaming under the rising sun. Soldiers fell before they even saw me, my blade slicing through flesh with brutal efficiency. Ren tore through their defenses in his titan form, his rage fueling every step. My Kaza was a whirlwind of steel, cutting down enemies with terrifying precision. Levi, as always, was an untouchable force of nature. And then there was me, weaving between the chaos, orchestrating their demise like a silent conductor. By midday, it was over. Marley's last stronghold had fallen. As I stood among the corpses, I looked up at the burning ruins of their fortress. The flames reflected in my eyes as the system chimed in my mind. System notification, mission complete, destroy Marley's remnants, experience point gained, 25,000, system coins gained, 15,000, new title unlocked, the Ghosts of War. I let out a slow breath, wiping the blood from my blade. Historia would be pleased. Eldia was no longer the hunted. Now, we were the hunters. Chapter 46, Attack on Titan High School, the most chaotic day ever. Morning mayhem, the arrival. Akira Kurogane stepped through the school gates, dodging a flying Jean Kirstein as the poor dude was drop-kicked by Ren Yeager. I swear to God, Jean, stop talking about my Kaza. It's not my fault she's hot. Boom. Jean crashed into the bushes. Again. Akira sighed. Another normal morning at Paradas High. Akira. A familiar voice called. He turned to see Historia, wearing a pristine uniform with a perfectly ironed blazer. Her angelic smile radiated purity. Which was a lie. Because behind the scenes, Historia was the secret mafia queen of the school. Morning, Historia. Akira greeted, already prepared for whatever favor she needed. You're coming with me to student council later. Do I have a choice? No. She said sweetly, before slipping a tiny note into his hand with some names. Akira sighed and glanced at the list. Connie Springer, owes money for putting debts. Rainer Braun, skipped mafia collection fee 3 times. Jean Kirstein, just for fun. Why is Jean on the list? Akira asked. Historia sipped her tea that seemingly appeared out of nowhere. For balance. Akira nodded. That made sense. Homeroom, Levi's cleaning nightmare. Homeroom was usually peaceful. But not today. Levi stood in front of the class, arms crossed, staring directly at Connie and Sasha, who were very clearly hiding stolen food. Springer. Blouse. Levi said, voice flat. Sasha gulped. Connie attempted to act innocent. Captain, I don't know what. Levi held up a single napkin with a grease stain. The entire class went silent. Armin whispered, they're dead. Ren muttered, rest in peace. Before Levi could exterminate them for disrupting his perfectly sanitized classroom, Hange burst in through the window. Yes, the window. Levi. You have to see this. Hanj was holding a mysterious green liquid that was literally smoking. Levi pinched the bridge of his nose. No. Absolutely not. It's for science. I refuse. Hanj grinned manically. Too bad, I already put some in your tea. Levi froze. The entire class gasped. Then, boom. A mini explosion erupted in the corner where Reiner had been sitting. Reiner emerged from the smoke, coughing. I think I have super strength now. Bertolt peeked from behind his chair. I think you were already strong, dude. Quiet. Levi snapped. Springer, blouse, detention. Hanj, stop poisoning people. Hanj looked entirely unapologetic. Akira just leaned back in his chair. Another normal day, lunch, the unofficial Ren vs. Jean fight club. The cafeteria was never a peaceful place. Mainly because Ren and Jean had a daily fight in the middle of it. Today was no exception. You wanna go, horseface? I've been waiting for this all day, Jaeger. Jean lunged. Ren tackled him. Trays flew. Food scattered. People cheered. Mike paused aside and grabbed her meal before it could be collateral damage. Armin just quietly moved to another table. Meanwhile, Historia was sitting at her table like a queen, watching the chaos unfold. Mir was beside her, laughing. Akira sat down next to them. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Historia delicately sipped her tea. Jean still hasn't paid his collection fee. I knew it. Jean suddenly flew across the cafeteria and landed face first into Connie's pudding. Hanj clapped. This is science in motion. Levi, standing in the doorway, sipped his tea. TCH. A bunch of idiots. History class, Irwin's unhinged motivational speeches. Irwin Smith was only the history teacher in title. In reality, he treated every lesson like a war speech. Students. Irwin began, his voice carrying the weight of 1,000 battles. Do you know what history truly means? Dates and events? Armin offered. Wrong. Irwin declared. History is about dreams. The class braced themselves. What do we hold in our hearts? Irwin slammed his hand onto the desk. Dreams of freedom. The room vibrated. And who are we, if not the ones to seize that freedom? Jean raised a hesitant hand. High school students? Irwin's soulful eyes locked onto him. High school students who can change the world. The entire class started clapping. Even Akira. Because damn. That man could talk. Gym class, Akira versus Levi. Gym class was supposed to be normal. But when two Ackermans were in the same room, it was never normal. Alright. The gym teacher sighed. We're doing a simple sparring match today. Levi cracked his knuckles. Akira smirked. The gym teacher hesitated. Wait, too late. Akira vanished. Levi reacted in an instant. Their clash sent shockwaves through the gym. Mikasa, watching from the sidelines, narrowed her eyes. I could take them both. Armin whispered, this is the end of the gym. Jean was eating chips. Yep. Goodbye, Jim. Levi launched a flurry of rapid strikes. Akira dodged, countering with a sun-breathing technique, the air slicing from his movements. Levi dodged. Then smirked. Then actually got serious. The entire school felt the battle. At some point, a small fire broke out in the corner. Nobody questioned it. Aftermath. After Jim, Akira, Levi, and Ren, for excessive violence, were all sent to detention. Levi sat at the front, glaring. Ren sat in the back, arms crossed. Akira? He just leaned back, amused. Then, the door creaked open. And Hanj walked in. I'm here to conduct a study. Levi sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. Hanj. No. It's for science. Ren groaned. Let me guess. You're testing another Titan juice. Hanj grinned suspiciously. Akira immediately moved his chair back. Nope. Not today. Historia peeked in from the hallway. I just came to remind Jean he still owes me. Jean, who had somehow been dragged into detention, groaned. Ren smirked. Still getting bullied by the Mafia Queen, Jean? Jean pointed at him. You were in the fight too, why am I the only one in debt? Historia sipped her tea. Balance. After school the day ended exactly as expected. Jean was running from Historia's collectors. Hanj was testing mystery substances on Reiner. Levi was sterilizing the entire classroom. Ren and Jean were already starting another fight. Historia was counting money. And Akira? He just walked home, sighing. Just another normal day. A normal day at Paradise High. Where nothing was normal.